Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Voltron Online Podcast. This is the Voltron show for Avatar The Last Airbender Online.com. This time we're going to be reviewing Voltron Legendary Defender Season 7. We're going to be discussing all of the episodes and going through it in depth. I'm going to be your main host for this episode, Morgan, Airspeed Prime. Joining me on the podcast is one other host, and that is Greg2B from the site.
What's up, everyone?
Excellent. So, yeah, we're going to be discussing Season 7 of Voltron, and usually what we do is we just do some kind of quick initial thoughts, how our initial viewing of it went, and then we're going to go through it kind of episode by episode, because we're back to the 13-episode format, so we felt it would be better to just do it episode by episode rather than trying to just, pick out points from all over the season and hope to cover everything. So, we'll start with just the, viewing experience, because this is a little bit different this time. We got the switch back to 13-episode seasons when it was 6 and 7-episode seasons before. I think it's pretty clear from how the season went that if we had ended after 6 episodes here, it would have been a fairly light, in terms of plot progression, season. 7 probably would have been too much of a cliffhanger because it's so related to the second half of the season. They sort of had to do it this way. But Greg, what was your kind of viewing experience like for a much longer season this time?
I guess it wasn't too much different. I did sort of pace myself a little bit. I think I actually didn't watch it the first week it came out. I just watched it this past week. So I think I watched about 2 episodes a day starting on Tuesday, and then I sort of sped up near the end of it just to get sort of all through. And then I rewatched it sort of at a speed and a half just to take some more notes and get it all down. So I sort of paced myself a little bit, but it definitely was a bit more episodes than I guess I sort of got used to from the past, couple seasons.
Myself, because I do YouTube videos covering it, I ended up watching it all on the first day, and it was a really long day just with making that many videos and having kind of hour and a half breaks almost between watching groups of episodes just because of trying to get a whole video uploaded. So I think I watched the first 4 episodes, then 3 per video over the course of 4 videos to cover the season. And yeah, it didn't end up being too bad. Maybe towards the middle it was just oh wow, there's a whole extra season here to go. But I suppose that was just getting used to a fairly easy to cover 6-7 episodes, and this is just that little bit more. But I think it worked because of I think what actually happened in the season and it being a very kind of impactful season. So yeah, for me it wasn't too much of an issue at all. It was just a kind of long day of making videos for the most part. So yeah, we'll start with some kind of general overall thoughts on season 7. Myself, overall, I thought it was a pretty good season. Don't quite know if it's the absolute best in that I think there are definitely a couple of issues here and there, kind of the borderline trademark Voltron kind of issues of them not quite doing things in the way you'd maybe expect them to do it, but they've still kind of done it. Some of the earlier episodes before they get to Earth, I think maybe they spent a little bit too much time on that, and then the action towards the end, just I suppose with regards to how Voltron does some of its sort of end game fight type stuff, felt a little bit samey, but at the same time it was still really interesting and exciting. But overall I liked it. The intensity they got around the return to Earth was well done, and that's what the whole season was about. So it got its main thing right, but maybe just some of the details weren't the best. But Greg, what were your overall thoughts on season 7?
Yeah, overall I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I think like you said, it definitely did have a good amount of intensity throughout most of it, at least just, them sort of getting back. I think at some points, maybe near the end of it, maybe the intensity seemed a bit much or maybe a bit over dramatic for what they were going for, or for what the actual sort of end game of the whole sort of season was. But I think for the most part, there were a couple points here and there that, kind of felt, I guess, a bit sort of out of place for me personally. But I think for the most part, I pretty much enjoyed it. I don't think there was anything that was really sort of, except for maybe 1 or 2 parts that really sort of took me out of sort of the flow of all the whole season.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we'll get into going through this episode by episode. That's probably the easiest way to cover it. So episode 1 is called A Little Adventure. This was the one that they showed at San Diego Comic-Con to everyone who was there, and a lot of the kind of rumors for the season in a way came out because of it. So I think we'll start with the backstory stuff that we get. That's the most important part of episode 1, and it's getting Shiro's backstory, setting up how he met Keith in the first place, and I suppose how Keith even got involved in the garrison. Plus it also covers a few other things like the direct lead into the Kerberos mission, revealing that Shiro actually has this muscle disease that makes his muscles deteriorate over time, and seeming like this could be one of the last missions for Shiro that he's able to go on, because of how bad this is. And in the middle of all of this, we did also get to meet Shiro's boyfriend Adam for at least a little bit. So a lot of little things happened in the backstory, but overall, Greg, what were your thoughts on getting to see some Shiro backstory?
I think it was pretty good. I mean, I like that we got to see at least a bit of his sort of history before the mission, and getting to see how he met Keith. I think that was it was a nice, I guess, sort of framing element that they had. That he's sort of like out of commission, and he's sort of thinking about all these things that's happened to him in his past as he's trying to, like, struggle for, surviving in the clone body here. And, Keith is there as well. So it's almost like it's like a shared sort of flashback thing, even though it was probably just in, Shiro's sort of mind that we're actually sort of getting all this stuff from. But no, I think overall, I think it was, it was nice to sort of actually get that sort of story between him and Keith. So, it clears up a bit of what happened in their past.
Yeah, this was definitely something we needed. We needed to know how they met initially, because especially last season, like it sort of made it clear that, like, okay, they knew each other before, but we didn't know like the details of it. So it helped to actually get this meeting of like Shiro actually just going to the school to test out new pilots, and Keith being the best pilot despite his discipline problems, and then with regards to what's actually happening in the, I suppose, present day story, I suppose what they're going for here is this is a flashback where Shiro helps Keith get through some issues in his life, whereas in real life, present day stuff, it's Keith trying to help Shiro get through this kind of scenario. So that was pretty interesting. But yeah, in a way, I suppose with this fandom, we probably should have predicted it, but of course, it ended up being the biggest issue from the entire season, and that was, I suppose, what they chose to do with Shiro's relationship with Adam, and it not being as big of a focus as people expected. I suppose I'll just start with your thoughts on this. I don't know how much you saw the fandom's reaction to this, but what were your thoughts on how they used Adam over the course of the season? Because it's only like an episode or two where he's actually in.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it didn't, irk me too much, but I wasn't sort of holding, in general, just the relationships of the show in that sort of high regard, just because, it hasn't been such a focus over the whole course of the thing. There's, little hints here and there of possible romances, and I think this season has like a bit more of it as, I guess, they sort of get to the end. Maybe they're sort of trying to show a bit more of it, which is cool. I think, it would help for, I guess, for the future, who could possibly end up with whoever. But for me, I think it was okay. I think, maybe they did sort of hype it a bit more up online than maybe that was sort of like the issue with it. I didn't pay, since I didn't watch it the first week, I definitely didn't know about all of the fallout that sort of happened. But as I sort of, taking notes and everything on it, I did sort of start to read articles and hear about all the threats and all the stuff that was just sort of happening, and sort of the movement to sort of bounce back from the threats and stuff that's been happening. So, I guess, like you said, it's something that we shouldn't be, I don't know, unfortunately too surprised about, but it definitely seems like this, I don't know, definitely got a lot more noise than I sort of would have thought it would have. I expect there always to be sort of issues with just any sort of, issues with the show in general, just because, people are invested in the show, and, people have different opinions, which is cool. But it definitely seemed, from the bit that I've read and the stuff that I've seen, that it definitely went to like the next level of that's not cool to do. But yeah, it definitely seems like it's taken a hold over some people's, I guess, sort of just general sort of enjoyment of the season, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. And yeah, a lot of it comes from the fact that yeah, at Comic Con, this was like the big reveal. This was all everyone was talking about. It pretty much was the only like reveal outside of the trailer from Comic Con as well. So they, to some degree, did overhype it by even mentioning it and not just kind of, I suppose, just letting people naturally interpret it after the episode and not really saying much. Um, but at the same time, they directly confirmed in details from Comic Con that they had broken up by this time and that it was more of a relationship from Shiro's past, but that you would meet Adam, which we technically did. It's just, I think, ultimately the fandom thinking that we'd get more of Adam than they expected. And like you brought up the other romances in the show, and I think that's a good example of like why we probably shouldn't have expected much of Adam, because like Allura and Lance are like two of the main characters in the show, and they're clearly building towards a relationship with them. But they had like 2 scenes this season, maybe 3, tiny little scenes, and that's basically the biggest romance in the entire show. And it's like 2, 3 tiny little scenes. So Shiro and Adam getting one kind of notable scene here, plus Adam being in it later, like I don't have too big of a problem, given that like they wanted to reveal that Shiro was gay, which they did with that scene, and then they just went in a different direction, obviously having Shiro go on the mission despite what Adam said and so on. So I actually enjoyed it for what it was, because I thought it was actually kind of naturally inserted kind of representation that actually worked quite well, because talking about, I suppose, that scene itself, you got to see a little bit of a different side of Shiro talking to Adam than you would have seen otherwise, because he's always the leader, the commander, like the oldest, most experienced member of the group in basically every situation. And here's someone who's like his equal, who's almost like calling him out for his own issues, and you have Shiro kind of being stubborn, which you wouldn't usually like associate with him. So I like that. I felt it made fairly clear without just kind of the show kind of almost awkwardly like pointing out that they're gay or anything like that. Which was an odd criticism that I saw other people make, that they should have been clearer about them being a couple, whereas I felt it was very obvious just because like we never see Shiro act like this, and the wording on what Adam said, I thought there was no other way to like interpret it. But what were your thoughts on the specific Shiro Adam scene that we got here about the argument of should he go on the Kerberos mission?
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely seemed like a relationship quarrel that they were having there. So it seemed to me definitely that he was basically leaving him because, Shiro's going on this mission, which, it is sort of like a long-term sort of mission. So, I mean, that's kind of hard to keep a relationship going with, regardless of him sort of, possibly injuring himself or, dying from his disease that he has, that would just like limit his ability just in general. So they definitely, made it seem pretty drastic. And it definitely, you definitely saw a side of Shiro where he's pretty determined to go on this mission for, whatever reason. And, he has the backing of Commander Holt, to sort of go on this mission regardless of, any sort of issues that he might have here. So, no, I mean, for me, I think it was a nice scene. I mean, could they have done more? Maybe they could have. I mean, it definitely seemed from, just from when they mentioned it before that, there might have been a bit more to it. But with it being something that definitely is in the past and it is in a flashback, definitely seems like there wasn't, as much that they could do with it. I mean, I think it would have been, it would have been interesting if, Adam was still around when he did come back, or if, somehow he knew, when Shiro was sort of landed before and he was sort of captured and held under guard. But, I guess that was a route that they didn't really see fit to go with. I mean, I think there's other issues with Shiro in general that, they probably could, do more with just in the season in general, just besides that.
Yeah, like there was a lot going on here. Like for the plot, like this had to be a Shiro and Keith flashback primarily, not just a romance flashback for Shiro. So the fact that they even kind of threw in that little bit, I thought was kind of good, just to have it there. But other than that, the flashback also sets up pretty nicely. Actually, I actually only really noticed this on the rewatch because Sam is arguing with Admiral Sonda here, because she's the one who stops him from going on the mission. So setting up like her and Sam arguing about things and kind of making the sort of easy decision on a lot of things, where just like, oh, you have a condition, you can't go, and everyone needing to argue with her to kind of get anything done. I like that setup for later on. You had the setup of it's, I think, the reference to the very first episode, where the kind of dive off the cliff that Shiro does is the same dive that Keith in the very first episode with the whole team does when they go off to find the blue line. So I thought that was a really cool thing of like Shiro explaining to Keith how to actually perform that technique. That was I think pretty nicely done. And then they obviously get across the idea that basically, here's this disease that Shiro had, here's this disease that his clone body doesn't actually have. So I think that was the idea of probably ultimately why they went with the whole weird clone body idea. But by the end of the episode, he ends up accepting, his spirit ends up accepting the clone body, and he's kind of back up and active again. Is there anything else here? I suppose on the other side of the story, it's a kind of odd plot where like the rest of the team, apart from like Keith and Kralia and Allura, go out to get fornitonium, which is found by these animals, the Yelmore, who have this weird ability to like make people small, with the idea that their powers can make fornitonium, which makes electricity bigger, which kind of just is a way to expand low energy and stuff like that. There's a lot of science going on here, even though it was such a small subplot. But I thought there was some fun little things of just, you know, doing the whole kind of shrink mechanic, and probably Hunk and Rommel were like the standouts of just their back and forths about being the normal people, while the rest of them are more kind of natural action heroes, and they're just like shocked at everything going on. Well, what were your thoughts on the Yelmore plot with everyone getting shrunk down?
Yeah, no, I thought that was definitely interesting. I mean, it's like one of those fun sort of side plots that they just sort of have, but at least it has some purpose with them sort of being able to sort of recharge the lines, and it has them sort of explore more of this world. I mean, it just seems like there's always like a interesting way for them to sort of get the power back or to charge up things or whatever. And it seems like, I don't know, I guess it's just sort of part of just Altain, just their culture in general, just being able to use sort of the natural environment, to sort of, power their devices, or just to sort of, control anything. So I think that's, it's a nice way of integrating that. And yeah, it was interesting to see, Hunk, be able to associate with someone else who realizes that everything that they're doing is sort of like, out of the norm. Like it's not normal, but somehow there is sort of like the ones that are able to sort of do this sort of thing. So no, I think it was a nice sort of side thing that they have there.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's episode 1. Episode 2 is called The Road Home, and this one primarily focuses on them making their like decision that like they can't get in contact with Earth right now. The lines are low on power, so they have to make this really kind of slow journey home where they have no wormholes because the castle is gone. So they just have to fly the lines on low power back to Earth, and they, I think, come to the conclusion that it will take a year and a half doing this, and it's going to be a really long journey. They just barely have enough supplies, and the focus of this episode is deciding who of the rest of the group goes into what line. Lance makes some initial pairings and it doesn't quite work. Then they switch them around a bit, they still don't quite work, and then the wolf, who gets named Cosmo, ends up kind of being the one who sort of ends up finding the proper pairings, which is more or less the characters who are most associated with the pilot of that line. So like Kralia and Shiro in the black line, the mice with Allura, Rommel with Lance, and that sort of thing. So I thought it was like a fun enough episode. There wasn't a lot to it because it was primarily just picking pilots who's going to be in each line, and then a really long action scene in the caves, which was a nice action scene, but it just meant that there wasn't a lot to the episode as such. But what were your thoughts on episode 2?
Yeah, no, I mean, it did definitely have a good bit of just figuring out who's going to be with who, which I guess for such a long journey, you would really want, the right people in the right sort of line just to sort of keep yourself, I guess, sort of sane in the long haul. But yeah, no, I think it was sort of a fun episode. I think, it didn't have sort of as much to it, but, I guess just sort of them sort of really coming, I guess, sort of to grips with the length of the journey that they have to sort of go on. I think was really sort of interesting to see how that sort of was at least taken in the beginning and just sort of no, I mean the action scene definitely was pretty long. I don't know, it's weird. It didn't seem quite as long, sort of when I watched it the first time, but you definitely can feel that it is like a good portion of the episode once things sort of start going. But no, I don't think it was that bad or anything. It's really just sort of like an extended sort of chase scene. With like a couple sort of small bouts here and there. So, and plus it did sort of set up the next episode, which I think is kind of interesting because you see these fighters, which they look like typical Galra, but there's something different about them as they sort of notice throughout the course of the fight. And when you do actually see them sort of out of their ships, you can tell that they're different from what we've seen in the past. So, I like how it sort of hints that things are changing before, really sort of making it really apparent.
Yeah, there's a couple of little moments in the episode like that. They find a Blade of Marmora kind of rally point station, but when they go in, it looks like it's been abandoned for years because of the amount of dust. But Kralia kind of confirms that, according to her, when she was in contact with them like only a few weeks ago, the station was still active. So that's weird. As you say, the Galra that they're fighting are more like pirates rather than like the typical military Galra as well, and they have new weaponry that looks more advanced. All this sort of stuff is just leading them like there's something is up for sure. The only other I think notable part of this episode is Hunk gets an upgrade to his Bayard cannon, which they kind of randomly do. They don't use it again in the season. It just happens here. He fires it at the wall, and the kind of light turns into two kind of mini cannons, and they start firing as well. And he takes down a Galra fighter just on the ground, which is pretty cool. Hunk definitely, this is kind of like the start of him getting a lot more of a focus this season, which I did appreciate. But as usual with Voltron, a little bit kind of weird about like what did he specifically do to unlock this upgrade. But they sort of explain it with Hunk's development this season. But still, nice little moment to give Hunk one of the bigger action scenes in the episode. The episode 3 is called The Way Forward, and obviously at the end of the previous episode it was revealed that this pirate group that they were captured by was actually led by Ezor and Zethrid. And then basically what happens is that the whole group is captured by the main kind of ship in all of this, leaving Karan, who was trapped in like the storage area of the Black Line in the previous episode, as the only one to save them. And I think it's him and the mice are actually still active, but very quickly into his sort of like stealth tactics around the base, he comes into contact with Aksha, who is here and is actually willing to help them. So this is like this kind of sudden reveal in the episode that is pretty interesting to see her suddenly come into play and be a pretty major focus in this episode. But what were your thoughts on, I suppose, the start of episode 3 here, with Karan kind of being the main character and then Aksha suddenly coming into play?
Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, it's always sort of fun or funny to see, Karan sort of move into action just because of, how confident he is versus his actual sort of abilities of doing anything. But, with the mice there, he definitely has, good backup. And then when you get to see Aksha, which is definitely interesting. I don't know. I don't think I was sort of expecting her. I mean, she's always sort of been iffy, as they mentioned in this episode and before, as far as, her sort of like allegiance is. But no, it's definitely interesting to see her here, and especially when you see her with a new design, or any of the characters with new designs here, you can tell that, it's just more hints at something, has been happening that you're not sort of quite aware of. So it definitely was interesting and cool to see.
Yeah, and another weird one, because obviously she's fighting Ezor and Zethrid for some reason. Like, what split those three apart? Why is she willing to help everyone here? and he's kind of shocked to hear that Voltron is actually still alive. The plan ends up being that they use the cannon to like blow open a hole in the hangar bay, sucks the lines out, and then while the ship is basically defenseless with a hull breach, they'll free all the paladins and get out. Which ends up happening in the middle of all of this. We basically get Ezor and Zethrid teasing Oxia about the fact that she has a crush on Keith, and then when Keith finds out that Oxia is helping them, he puts Lance in charge of the rest of the team and goes out to help her specifically. And again, there's a little bit more teasing about this kind of relationship actually happening. So I'm kind of happy with this one, because obviously I've kind of been calling this for like a couple of seasons now, that like Keith Oxia is probably a ship they're going for. So I was all for this. I know a lot of people are very annoyed about this, because like Keith is shipped with like everyone else except Oxia apparently, with the crazy Voltron shipping fandom. But I'm happy with this. Hopefully it gets more development next season. But definitely interesting. They fight well together. I think it's had okay setup before now, because they've always sort of helped each other, even kind of inadvertently, like Keith by mistake, Oxia returning the favor, and then I think they've had that cycle happen like again, and it obviously happens in this episode again as well. So what were your thoughts on them seemingly committing to this as well, because they also have her kind of come back next to Keith in like the last episode as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine if that's the sort of route that they go with. I think they have had, enough with it, and they just they reference it, directly in here that there's something going on. So, it's enough there that there is something. I mean, it's kind of too bad that she really is only in this episode and one other one, and then she sort of just goes ghost somehow for the rest of the season, which is, I guess, a bit sort of odd that they chose to go that route. But, as far as, her character being in here and them sort of, setting that up, through the past couple seasons, I think, it'll be, okay if they actually decide to go more with it. But I don't really know how much they're really going to do with it, just because it just seems like she's, I don't know, maybe she'll have more of an important role in the next season. But as of now, it definitely seems like she's just sort of there to help randomly and then sort of bounce out.
Yeah. The last scene in this episode is Keith saves Oxia from the big explosion. It seems like Ezor and Zethrid are killed. I'm not sure if we're meant to interpret it that way. They feel like too important of characters, or like noted characters, to just be killed off like so casually. So I wouldn't be shocked to find out they survive. But they get to where like Oxia has like made camp, I suppose, where she was before all of this, and she reveals to them that they've actually been missing for 3 years. Even though for the Paladins it's only been a couple of weeks. So time dilation stuff relating to the finale of last season with the whole universe exploding kind of situation has meant that they've missed 3 years of action and what's happened here. That's why everything has changed so much, and that's why things seem so bad and kind of bad with everything going on. She does explain that in the middle of this power vacuum with Voltron gone, Ezor and Zethrid wanted to kind of seize that power for themselves, and Oxia at this point decided that she actually wanted to take a different path on her own that wasn't directly related to that, and she commits at this point that she will help the coalition. And it's very subtle in that, like, you have to like almost watch the episode twice, but like the explanation for her going missing is that she says that like, I'll help the coalition from here. So like it's just the one little line that actually confirms that she's not going with them, because I was shocked in like the next episode, in episode 5, when she was just nowhere to be seen, but she gives the vaguest of explanations about where she actually is going. But what were your thoughts on the whole they've been missing for 3 years in the real world, I suppose?
Yeah, no, it was good to finally sort of get the actual number, because you can tell by now hopefully that they have been missing. It's just sort of how long have they been sort of out of action. And I think it's funny how they do the whole thing beforehand where they say, what was it, 3 Doboshes or something like that or whatever, and then they eventually, by the end of it, they actually converted over to Earth years, because unless you know how that works, that's kind of hard to figure out. But no, I think it definitely is interesting to see that they've been out of action that long. And I don't know, it's definitely I don't know, it makes you wonder how, some people, like Commander Holt was able to sort of keep the hope alive for that long that, Voltron would come back without any real sort of word of their sort of appearance. But, clearly, there has been hope. And, I guess even before, the Paladins of this, I guess sort of generation came back, there was, quite a bit of time before when, Voltron was out of action as well. So I guess maybe it's not as long in relativeness.
Yeah. I definitely went over to grab the Paladin's Handbook to find the time conversion thing, and yeah, it does say in that book that a Dobosh is decaphoebe, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. They say 3 decaphoebe.
Decaphoebe, yeah.
And a decaphoebe is a year direct conversion. So that was interesting. But yeah, episode 4, The Feud. Bit of a weird episode. This one. This is our game show episode. We basically just jump straight in, I believe. Like they just suddenly wake up. They're in the middle of this game show presented by this guy called Bob. The game show's called Garfle Warfle Snick, and it's only the 5 paladins, the 5 members of Voltron who are there, and no, they have no idea what's going on, but they just have to accept that they're in this game. They have to earn a certain amount of money points in the game to get out of it. I think the first thing that happens is that Keith has to do like Pictionary, so he has to draw things. Lance ends up guessing most of them wrong, but the rest of the team kind of get him out of it. There's a lot of craziness happens. I'm not going to recap the whole thing. There's a fun moment where like these fake versions of like Zarkon, Hagar, Lothor come up, and they go away fairly soon. Lance has a really long extended sequence where he's talking to Bebobi, which is funny, but it's also like, wow, this is very long to just be saying Bebobi over and over again. The result of this is that the main takeaway from the episode is that they get to the final round where basically Bob offers them the opportunity that you can all vote for one member of your team, and that the team member who gets the most votes will be allowed to go free. The rest of you will have to stay here forever. And they all end up voting for each other for a variety of different reasons. So no one gets more than 1 vote, and no one doesn't get a vote. So everyone is voted for by someone for a variety of different reasons, and because of this, they're deemed worthy and are all allowed to go. And then Karan, when they all wake up, reveals that, oh, you met Bob. Bob is actually this like all-powerful space being who most people don't even survive their encounter with, but if you do, it means that you're destined for great things. So I felt like right at the end, okay, I'm a sucker for that sort of world building of like space entity type stuff. Like, okay, I'll let you away with this kind of random episode, because at the end of it, like, it was fun. But if not for the final scene of them all kind of having that kind of heart-to-heart with each other with their reasoning for their vote, there wasn't really a lot to this episode. This is their kind of like free episode where they're allowed to do whatever they want, and it was fine for what it was, but I didn't think it was like too amazing or anything like that. But what were your thoughts on the feud?
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't, anything sort of spectacular. I mean, I don't know, it served as, I guess, maybe like a team building sort of exercise that they sort of inadvertently had to sort of do, which they seem to do, I guess, a lot of that, just, I guess, the season in general, just sort of trying to sort of, I guess, just get them more, I guess, as a unit, as a unified group with this sort of like current roster of paladins, which I think is kind of cool. I'm not sure if this specific, episode and the way that they went about it was absolutely sort of necessary. It's definitely one of those episodes where it's just there just to sort of be there. And, like you said, at the end, it does have like the nice moment of them sort of, supporting each other, and, it sort of shows that they're sort of, destined, I guess, sort of for great things, which, I mean, they're the paladins, so it's kind of sort of a given that that's sort of what they're going to go for. But I guess this is just to sort of, make it more aware to us as the viewer that, they really are going to be doing something. But other than that, yeah, it definitely was one of the episodes where I'm just like, all right, I guess it's here, but it's not something I'm really going to focus on too much.
Yeah. Episode 5 is called The Ruins, and the core of this one is that they find a hidden distress signal from the Blades of Marmora, which leads them to this kind of seemingly abandoned planet. There's been tons of battles. They note immediately there's both damage from magic as well as damage from blades of Marmora swords. and they find this seemingly native member of this planet. I can't remember the exact name of the species, but he's wearing a mask, so it's sort of like obstructed as to who he exactly is. And he basically explains to them the story of what happened on this planet. After Voltron disappeared, the Blades had to like take up basically as the leadership of the Voltron Coalition. Hagar and all of this went missing. They specifically note that, and that the Druids were left with a certain mission. They fulfilled that, which seemed to be hunting down all of the Blades, and they made their last stand on this planet. So it was this big battle between the Blades of Marmora, the warriors from this planet, against the Druids, and they basically say hundreds of Blades were killed in all of this, with everything that happened, and the implication is that none actually survived. In the middle of all of this, I think Crollia finds out that Calivan is actually still alive, because she finds his blade and it actually has a slight glow to it. And the big twist in this episode is that this native actually reveals himself to be a druid, but not just any druid. It's the same one who fought Keith back in season 2? Season 1 or 2, I can't remember exactly when this would have taken place. Probably more like 2, because I think he was a blade at the time. This is where the whole Han quintessence thing happened. And the core here is that he traps everyone else in this sort of time bomb thing, and it's only Keith and Cosmo who fight off this druid, and it's another really long action set piece in a tunnel. They teleport all over the place. Allura ends up breaking them out of this kind of magic time spell thing, and the group overall ends up kind of getting the victory, because Keith throws his sword and catches the druid mid-teleport, and in all of this, Calivan is revealed to actually still be alive as well, and the Paladins continue their journey on after Crollia makes the decision to go with Calivan to restore the Blades of Marmora. She has to do this on her own, and Keith gives away his Galra knife sword back to his mother, saying that, when they meet again, you can give it back. It's one of those episodes where I thought I liked it. It was a little bit of a side story, but helped to explain a lot of things that were going on. And a lot of little references. I didn't think that druid that fought Keith would ever be referenced again. Allura gets another kind of, she's really good at magic and seems to be able to like absorb things. That coming back after, like, I think the season 2 finale was basically the last time we saw that. And yeah, it just nice kind of history kind of episode, just explaining a little bit more of what happened with the Blades, and further hinting that like the Voltron Coalition has taken a really big hit while Voltron's been gone. So what were your thoughts on the Ruins?
Yeah, no, I thought episode was, I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I guess it is sort of like a side sort of story, but, at least it has some sort of history. It has, a good action set piece in the end. I mean, it even has like a continuation of more sort of team bonding, team sort of training in the beginning of the episode with the whole simulator that they sort of do here. So, there's a couple different elements of this one, and I think that helps to sort of just set the stage for where they are in the world, and where what sort of happened in the past 3 years as they have been out of it. So you definitely get you just see more and more sort of how dire the situation, which just sort of ramps up as they sort of continue on sort of trying to get closer and closer to Earth here. So I think for the most part, this episode I think was actually pretty good for me. I definitely like the action and how they've been using sort of Cosmo, even in the beginning, how they use him to sort of transport just the food that Hunk makes. I think is really a nice sort of touch. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just really convenient to have sort of a teleporting wolf in your group in general. But definitely, it's a fun little thing that I appreciate at least a bit. And he definitely, it gets used enough throughout the season that clearly they've thought about how they were going to use this wolf from the beginning. So I think for me, the episode is pretty good.
Yeah, and I like how it's the rest of the team that names him Cosmo, and Keith's actually like, no. I was thinking of waiting for him to eventually like tell me his own name, but I think the wolf likes the name Cosmo, and Keith just has to accept that, okay, that's what he's called, and everyone just calls him that for the rest of the season. So that was a fun little thing. Another actually really important little detail, the only time this is really mentioned apart from like the very final scene of the season, is that Keith asks Calivan if he accomplished the mission that he set him, which was to go to the colony to find the other Alteans, and he reveals that he sent a team there, but they found nothing. They found the all the houses and stuff like that, the facility, but there were no actual Alteans there. So that's obviously a season 8 setup that clearly Hagar, more than likely linked in with what happens in the very last episode this season, has done something with the Alteans. Lotor may be involved. I really like that as a little setup. It's like the only time the hero characters properly mention what's happened on the colony, but really cool mention. Do you have any thoughts on what that meant?
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely, that's probably the main thing that hints to what the next season is going to be about, along with, the last sort of, I guess that is sort of like the last scene of the last episode with the Alteans. So, no, I think that definitely is a good setup. And, I guess, with everything else, the focus is, definitely, Earth for this sort of season here. So I guess it makes sense that it wasn't sort of like overly mentioned, but, you can see that clearly that's going to play a role, which, kind of makes sense since they're sort of the ones that sort of started the whole thing with Voltron and everything. So it'd definitely be interesting to see how they use the Alteans for the ending of the show.
Mm-hmm. Episode 6 is called The Journey Within, and once again, this is that, like, they just have to get on with their journey. It's going to take 1.5 years to get back to Earth, and they need more power, basically. This is where Shiro brings up the idea that they've done it before, that they should be able to just, by connecting to each other, power the lines back up like they did when they fought Zarkon, but he says that requires a team of fully realized paladins, and this is where Allura steps in and feels that she is the odd one out in all of this, that's stopping them from being able to do that, because she is the only new member of the team compared to how they were able to do it before. And it basically starts this trend of immediately after this they're hit with this kind of light and like cosmic storm type thing, which basically results in them after a few series of similar things happening. They all get separated from their lines and they're just drifting out in space on their own. No supplies, it's just the 5 paladins there floating around with seemingly no hope, and the entire episode is about them gradually kind of going mad from these like hallucinations, kind of giving up, getting angry at each other, and saying some hard truths in some situations, but being probably overly harsh with a lot of them. And you get some pretty crazy moments of like Keith insulting Alfor, I think calling like Alfor like a not a good leader. Allura calling out Keith for leaving with the Blades a couple of seasons ago. He then counters back about the whole stuff with Lotor. Hunk is the one to like keep everyone together in all of this. He's the one who doesn't really get to insulting anyone and just tries to calm everyone down. And just as everyone's about to go mad, they spot Earth, but Hunk is the one to point out the fact that, yeah, that's Earth, but there's no sun. There's nothing else out here. This is not what it is, that they're in trouble. And he's the one to first activate his Bayard and fire it, revealing it to be this giant animal who's kind of creating these illusions in their mind and so on. And basically after this, very quickly, they all have their Bayards back. They connect with the lions. The lions seem to be powered up again, and they don't defeat this enemy. They just kind of get away from it, and they get this new upgrade for Voltron where Keith and Lance activate their Bayards, and it creates this kind of turbo booster, which is obviously meant to, I think, cut the time down from 1.5 years to immediate, basically, more or less. The time's a bit weird. The time throughout the entire series has been very weird, because they seem to imply that, like, at least a year passed between, like, the end of season 4 and 5 or something like that in, like, the next episode. So there's definitely some odd time stuff going on here. With this episode, I know a lot of people really, really liked it. I felt it could have been better for what it actually was, which was primarily just the paladins talking to each other. I think what it really lacked was just anything really concrete that allowed them all to sort of like develop in a way. It just all felt a little vague and like kind of sudden how it all happened. That like Hunk saves them, and then immediately it's just kind of like they save Hunk, who's willing to sacrifice himself for them, and then that's what forms the entire team together. It was nice for what it was. Like I did like the Hunk development that we got here, and just the team, the whole speech from Keith about them actually being friends, having said something pretty terrible previously. So I think it was just like a solid episode rather than being like an amazing episode like some people have been saying. But what were your thoughts on the journey within?
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, I thought it was a good episode. I don't think I was blown away by it. But you know, I think it was nice to get to see the Paladins sort of, you know, forced to sort of deal with sort of their sort of situation and their sort of, you know, truths or harsh truths that they have, you know, sort of been going through, which, you know, being stuck in space will let you do. So, you know, I mean, we've seen, you know, episodes like this before, and, you know, with these creators, we've seen them do similar stuff like this before. So, you know, it's not sort of out of the realm of what we, you know, might sort of expect to happen. And, you know, it is a sort of a forced sort of bonding sort of exercise. I mean, I don't know, you know, sometimes it does seem a bit sort of interesting how they can sort of, you know, pull through some of these things, but, you know, they are sort of a good sort of, I guess, sort of team in general together. So, you know, just sort of, I guess, you know, understanding each other, or at least a little bit, you know, getting to know each other a bit better, you know, in their current sort of configuration of their team, I think, you know, definitely sort of helped to sort of bring them together. And yeah, no, I think it definitely, you know, it was nice to sort of see Hunk be the type of character that, you know, he, you know, normally is, where he's trying to sort of, you know, help everyone sort of stick together here. And, you know, even Keith, he does sort of try it in the beginning, but, you know, he has, you know, some issues too, as, you know, they all do, but he definitely has some more, even if he is sort of the leader, and has, you know, definitely grown a lot more as a leader, which I think is cool to see his development over time. But no, I think I definitely like, you know, Hunk for what he sort of says or what he tries to do in this episode, and him sort of being the one to sort of start things, you know, off in this episode and sort of, you know, get the ball rolling.
Next is episode 7, The Last Stand, Part 1. And this is a really, really good episode. I really like this one. Sam Holt becomes the main character here. Obviously, the Paladins have previously got to the solar system. They discover over the scanners that Earth has been taken over by the Galra. And that they hear this message from Sam that, you know, they're making their last stand. You know, everyone's been captured and all of this, and they don't know what's happened. And then we cut to 4 years earlier. So we know our team has been gone for 3 years, which means that they've at the very least experienced the passage of 1 year since, like, the end of season 4 was when Sam left. So, you know, then to now, a year has passed. Doesn't really seem like that, which is a little bit weird, but, you know, that's obviously the time they're going for in the show. There's a lot to talk about in this episode. We get a very similar thing in that, like, he ends up waking up in a very similar way to, like, Shiro in, like, the first episode, where it's revealed that he's been kept unconscious for a week because of Sanda being overly cautious. He reunites with his wife, and I think this is our first time, I suppose, properly getting to meet Colleen Holt, and we get their kind of emotional reunion, and he has to reveal to her, plus the rest of the garrison, basically, everything that's happened, and we get a full, like, 5 minute or so recap of everything that's happened. That, like, it's been a while since we've been with the Galaxy Garrison. We need to make it clear that, yeah, look, Earth actually knows nothing about what's happened for most of the series. This character does actually need to recap to these people, like, everything. What the Galra are, what Quintessence is, what the Voltron Coalition is, and what Voltron is. So, while it seemed like it was just recapping information we knew, I really liked it because you had him blowing people's minds there with all of this information that even though we as the audience know it, to Earth it's this completely kind of crazy stuff, and he knows that war is coming and that Earth needs to prepare. So I suppose we'll just talk about this first section here. But what were your thoughts on, I suppose, just the start of this episode and just switching focus to now Sam Holt is the main character here. He's like the borderline leader of Earth to make this last stand.
Yeah, no, I think it was nice to see how, Earth, or at least this part of Earth, this organization, which, is called the Galaxy Garrison. So, you expect that they would be able to sort of, deal with, space things or anything in space, but you can see how even them, just, Earth just doesn't have, has never been exposed, which I guess is always sort of things of how we would respond to other forces or other life forms in the world. So I think it definitely was an interesting take on how he presented all this information to their joint chief of staff here and Sandra, and just seeing their reactions, how some of them sort of wanted to be sort of blasé about everything, but him sort of standing firm with what he's done and what he knows, and the fact that he has been captured for quite a while, that he knows a lot of the inner workings, maybe even more so than sort of the Paladins, just because he's been behind the scenes of things. And as we find out later on in a couple of episodes, he's helped directly develop technology that is used almost to sort of destroy Earth. So I don't know, I think it's definitely cool to see how he sort of takes command of most of this sort of situation here.
Yeah, I really liked how he just had to get through a lot of this, I suppose, arrogance of like, they all think that the Galaxy Garrison is like the most technologically advanced thing in the world, but he has to just be really blunt with them and say that, like, okay, you think a lot of what I'm saying is like silly, but I've been out there, like every other species basically is like so much more advanced than we are. We think we're the best, but we're not. So I thought that was really cool to just see him kind of just mention stuff like that effectively, like, Zarkon is older than like all of human civilization, which is like a crazy line to say, but it's true basically. Next we basically get to the whole point of like the conflict of this episode, Sam versus Sonda, that Sam wants to tell the world, warn them of the attack, and also get support so that they have more people working on new tech, which is kind of what the most of this episode focuses on, which is preparing Earth for the battle, which is making new fighters that can actually damage the Galra, teaching the recruits to fly them so that they're prepared, because we immediately find out that they've been doing that because they had the pod that Shiro landed in from season 1, and they've done some reverse engineering already, but they don't have a power source for it. Human power sources don't work, they need a crystal, and obviously it's Sam who brings the knowledge of crystals and how to properly power them. We do get to, I suppose, to some degree meet this group of cadets here, including Griffin, who we met in the first episode. He was kind of like the one who was annoyed that Keith was the best at the simulator. I suppose while we're here, what were your thoughts on the four pilots, the four, I suppose, MFE pilots as they kind of come to be known? Griffin's probably the only one we really get like focus on, but like, what were your thoughts on them introducing a bunch of like similarly aged characters to the Paladins?
Yeah, no, I think that definitely was an interesting way that they went about, which I guess, it kind of makes sense that, the younger sort of class would sort of be, I guess, more adaptable to sort of, taking on this new technology, as we've seen with, our current group of paladins, and the fact that they are, some of them are, or they all are from the same class as, our current group. I think is, it's a nice way that they sort of set it up, even when you see the flashbacks and you see sort of like, what is it, young Hunk and young Lance, in sort of the first initial group of their sort of training as, I guess, cadets. You get to see them all as sort of kids. I think it's fun how they sort of set that up. So no, I think it's definitely a nice way of sort of, I guess, showing that this is the generation of people who are going to be fighting the Galram, being part of sort of the Paladin, just sort of the whole sort of, I guess, coalition, the whole sort of Earth sort of forces here. So I think it's I think it was a nice sort of thing that they set up.
After this, we kind of skip ahead a year, and we find that like the pilots are all amazing, that the ships are actually working really, really well. Matt actually contacts them because this whole time they've been trying to contact Voltron. Matt contacts them and reveals that things are really bad. Voltron's been missing for 6 months at this time, and most of the coalition is being hunted down, and it's not going well at all for the coalition. Earth needs to be saved, and Matt basically says, you need to stop contacting us because it will put Earth at risk. And this is where Sam kind of makes the decision that they absolutely need to tell the world, because they're working on the Atlas, which is brought up here for the first time, which is this giant ship, and they need much more manpower to make this work, because at this point the idea is that they have 4 like advanced fighters, they have like working on a shielding system, some cannons, but it's just this one base that has this new technology, and the last 6 months in a way have been wasted because Sonda's been holding them back to only the people within the garrison doing all of this. And it's interesting that they kind of give Colleen the kind of emotional kind of moment here, where she's the one who kind of makes the decision that they have to go behind the military's back and just leak this information to the world. And this is where they send out the broadcast and they effectively explain what was partly what we saw, but then they show the rest of it, which is primarily, I suppose, what really sells people on it, which is showing the messages that the Paladins actually sent home, which Sam had, and we get to see them there. So we get to see, Hunk talking to the camera in space, Lance, Katie. We cut back to see their families, which I thought was pretty nice. We get to see Veronica actually before her official kind of debut, I suppose, in the series, and the result of this is that it seems like Sonda is going to like court-martial Sam, but Iverson kind of stands up for him, and Sam feels that he has to be the one to lead all of this, and the result is that Sonda kind of reluctantly lets Sam kind of be the leader for all of this, that she won't get in the way as much after this. And the episode ends with the fact that they've just finished the particle barrier, and they activate it just as the Galra arrive, and Earth is now under attack. So yeah, what were your thoughts on this? Them sending out the broadcast, us getting to see those kind of emotional messages home, and then the kind of big arrival right at the end.
Yeah, no, I think this was, one of the cases where, telling people the truth actually, worked out for the better in the end. And it's only, too bad that, or, just, typical sort of politics and bureaucracy that sort of, held them back from actually sort of achieving, sort of what they really wanted to actually do to sort of, protect the Earth. Because, it definitely seemed at this point with everything that sort of Sam knew that, they definitely could have had, sort of the ability to sort of, protect, the Earth better, with, slightly better planetary defenses than what they currently have. So it's just one of those, I guess, sort of unfortunate timing things. But no, the broadcast definitely worked. It definitely was very sort of emotional, and it's interesting just to see, how he, he's not afraid to actually sort of, take charge and sort of, lead this whole sort of endeavor, which, it never really seemed like he had too much of an issue not doing it. He just sort of, wasn't really in the real sort of position to actually do this sort of thing.
Yeah, it was just this kind of interesting experience to kind of get to see like the Earth characters react to the fact that like Lance, Hunk, Pidge primarily are actually these like legendary heroes out in space, when the last time they saw them they were these kind of like bottom of the barrel recruits who couldn't do anything, which is like them from episode 1. But now all of a sudden they're like the veterans who know the most about this stuff, like sending these messages home. It was a cool thing to just see the kind of journey of the show so far, kind of through those messages coming back, that them coming back, like they are so different in terms of just how skilled they are when they return. But yeah, we move on to episode 8, which is The Last Stand Part 2. We find out that it's Semdak who's leading this attack, of course, with I think the implication that more or less he's been the only one to sort of like unite a large part of the Galra Empire into sort of an attack kind of unit, but he still doesn't have like a overly massive force. I suppose that's the one thing, is that like by the end of the series, the season, we find out that like he did only have a limited number of ships, even though it was still a lot. But they instantly overwhelm Earth. The base, the main Galaxy Garrison base, comes under attack here. Sam wants the MFEs sent out, but Sonda actually sends the normal pilots out and just the standard the standard fighters, and Sonda refuses to send the MFEs out. And we get immediately warned by Sam here that you are sacrificing these people by doing this and not immediately fighting with the best stuff that we have. And it's Adam who actually is like the squad leader of this squad of fighters, and there's like 10 of them. And it's this actually surprisingly emotional sequence. When I watched it the first time, it was kind of like, is that Adam? Because like we'd only met Adam once, so like it's hard to tell with him in the flight suit. Like, is it him? Is it him? And I sort of skipped through it. But then when I realized like, okay, it is him, and watched it the second time, it's actually this really like emotional scene that like sets like the stakes of the arc up completely, because it's only one character that we know who it is, but seeing them all just get like wiped out on Sonda's orders and how like ignorant she is to the whole thing, it makes the stakes so much higher, because Sam is completely right that if Sam had full control, this wouldn't have happened. That Adam, who's important to Shiro, has just been like killed for basically no reason, and now it suddenly makes kind of Shiro's arc that little bit more tragic, because he's going to return and find this out. But I thought they did this well to get across that like they're not going to be showing a ton of death on screen, but here's like a way to show that people are actually dying even if they're not showing all of it. But what were your thoughts on this scene here, I suppose, showing like the death of Adam here, but the whole fighter squadron here?
Yeah, I think it definitely was. I mean, I think the impact was definitely just to show, sort of how weak and how inequipped our forces really are, which is, what Sam has been saying this whole time. He's been saying that, we can't fight the Gora at all, basically. We're just, we're not advanced enough, which is just showing, I guess, sort of typical human sort of, ego that, we think that we're the best with everything until we sort of see that we're not. But yeah, no, it definitely is, sort of impactful just for the fact that, it is someone that Shiro knows, and, I guess we can assume that Sam knows this as well and just knows the whole relationship or the past relationship. So, he probably feels, even more bad about the whole sort of situation here, but, it's sort of out of his hands, unfortunately, I guess. But yeah, no, it definitely just, it just shows, that sort of, the screen where you see, all the pilot ships are just sort of gone, and then, Sendak sends his sort of ultimatum. Definitely just, definitely shows you, where we are in the chain of things.
Mm-hmm. After this, basically, we find out very quickly that all of the Galaxy Garrison bases are under attack. There's a lot of kind of dialogue and sort of like almost the background of scenes, like referring to like different countries, like actual real countries, like East Coast base and stuff like this, and so on. But it basically comes, like, Semdak comes to the conclusion, and Sam comes to the conclusion that this is basically the entire Galra fleet versus the main Galaxy Garrison headquarters is basically the battle for Earth. Everywhere else on Earth falls because they just don't have the defenses. They only have 4 fighters that can do any damage, which is what we see here. The MFEs are sent out. They take out a bunch of ships. They then activate the one ground-based advanced cannon that they have that takes out a cruiser. So they're doing some damage, but they can't push the attack. They can only defend with it. And Samdak realizes this, falls back, and basically just takes over the rest of Earth while all of this is kind of happening. And Sonda at this point is sort of left in this position where she doesn't know what to do, because she wanted to go with classic military tactics. They're not going to work. And while she's basically failing to make a decision, Sam is forced to sort of step up to become the leader and put all the hope on the fact that they have to defend and hold out for Voltron to come. So pretty cool moment to see Sam, this is his proper moment, stepping up. This is where we properly meet Veronica for the first time, who suggests that they can get supplies from a nearby depot. I think she also casually references the fact that it's a World War III depot at this point, which is an interesting little point about the Voltron universe, that there has been a World War III at some point. and we get the 4 pilots of the MFEs go with Veronica to this depot, and it seems like we get another sacrifice. At some point here, Lance is mentioned, so we know it's Lance's sister that is apparently like been left behind. Like, they don't show her being like hit or anything like that, but it seems like everyone interprets it as this is the death of Veronica. What are your thoughts, Greg, on the introduction of Veronica here and them almost immediately like leading you to believe she's dead?
Yeah, no, that was really quick. It's like, oh, this character that, is related to a character we know, and she's possibly gone. I mean, I don't know. I didn't, they don't show her directly sort of getting hit, and this sort of collapse of the tunnel, I thought was almost sort of like, like it's one of those things that's sort of done on purpose to sort of, let the train through. But it definitely seems like, she doesn't have much hope. She'll be, at the very least, sort of captured, which makes it, all the more interesting when you do see her again sort of later on here. But yeah, no, I think it's definitely interesting just to see, them sort of go to this depot that is World War III depot and just sort of, try to sort of, get, the supplies that they need to just sort of survive and to continue sort of building what they hope is going to be their last hope.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, when they get back, like, Semdak, I think, takes out their communication network at this point. We find out that most of humanity has actually been enslaved and is working for the Galra at this point. The Atlas is done, more or less, minus a proper way to power it. It's at this point, I think, we find out Veronica makes it back with her family because she joined up with an underground resistance network. And these work camps with all the slaves are making multiple Galra structures across the planet. So they're setting up that something's being built here, they don't know what it is just yet. They make the decision that they have to make one last message out to Voltron. So they send a rocket out into space, expecting it to get shot down. Semdak does that, and they use all these communication nodes to actually send out the message. And this is the same message that Voltron actually hears. And then we just get the final speech at the end of this episode from Sam saying that, supplies are low, backs are against the wall, but they're now more dangerous than ever, that they have to make one last stand and they won't go down without a fight. So what are your thoughts on the end of this episode? Just the kind of, I suppose, the last desperate attempts prior to this last stand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that's just sort of how they always have to sort of set it up that we're in sort of like the dire straits here. But, I think his speech was definitely sort of, it was definitely very good. It definitely, it looked like it, it did something for morale, which they mentioned, earlier is really low just with like all the lack of supplies and just, the fact that, the whole world except for this one base is, essentially captured and taken over, which is, almost sort of a crazy sort of feat to even sort of think about here. But, the fact that, I don't know, it definitely shows you his characteristics as a leader, that he is, able to give some sort of help in this sort of situation where, there's no one else is really able to do anything or understands, even a little bit enough to actually do anything. So, yeah, no, it's definitely sets the stage for what's to come.
Mm-hmm. Episode 9 is Know Your Enemy, and at this point the Paladins get through to Sam to send a message back to Earth, but they're immediately told to actually kind of like hold back, and they make the decision that, okay, the problem here is the lines, that if they bring the lines to Earth, they're kind of immediately putting everything at risk because they're what he's there for, and stuff could go wrong if the lines kind of get captured and all of this. So they park all of the lines on Saturn and use a captured Galra ship to get back to Earth. They get back, fairly easily. They kind of go undercover through all of this, right down in the desert, more or less next to the base, and they have a quick. You get like the emotional reaction of them to seeing destroyed cities, the fact that the Earth is primarily captured by Galra. They have to stealthily go through a city. There are Galra spy drones all over the place, and they destroy a couple and meet up with the MFE pilots who are kind of out there kind of patrolling. There's a little bit of a tension between them of just like those pilots know better, I suppose, how to deal with these exact defenses, and the Paladins adapt fairly quickly, and this is where we get the proper reunion. They bring them back into the base, and this is Paige reuniting with her parents, and specifically her mother for the first time in a while. Lance reunites with his whole family, but Hunk's family isn't there, and it's revealed that they're still captured because they're kind of from slightly further away. but there's hope that they will be able to get them back. Shiro reunites with Iverson here, and there's a fun little joke about the whole episode 1 thing of them more or less treating Shiro like an alien in like the first episode, and he introduces the Alteans, Karan, Allura, Ramel, to them for the first time. And I suppose the more notable scene here as well is Keith saluting Iverson, and Iverson, I suppose, giving Keith some respect given everything that he's done. So yeah, we get our proper reunion here. What were your thoughts on the first little bit of this episode?
No, I think it was nice. It was nice to see, sort of the Paladins sort of come back, and I mean, it is definitely sort of a dire situation, but the fact that they were able to make it back, pretty much unsort of noticed here, and it didn't cause any more issues, yet at least, I think is pretty cool, and to see the sort of groupings of people. I think I like that sort of part, getting to see people sort of meet each other after sort of a long time, and to see the changes that have happened, and sort of the respect that has sort of earned over the course of the time that they have been apart.
Next little bit that happens is that we get some surprising, like, I suppose not overly surprising, tension between Griffin and Keith, kind of out of nowhere almost. Shiro finds out that Adam was killed during all of this. Then they get to debrief about everything that's happening, just how bad things are. Allura offers to assist with Altean tech. And then I suppose the big conflict here is that Sonda immediately brings up the idea of like, oh, now that you're here, we can just hand over the lines and everything will be okay. And it again being a sort of like ignorance in all of this, like not understanding the value of Voltron and what the enemy having that actually means. Allura kind of settles the argument by saying that just flat out they're not giving them up, and that the hope that they have is by analyzing Semdak's tactics, which they can from his memories that they have, which, like, I haven't looked this up since, but like I know they had him captured at one point. I can't remember the specific situation where they had like his memories in the castle at some point. I know it was something related to the whole episode where he like infiltrated the castle on his own, but did you remember specifically like where they got his memories from?
No, I just thought it was from that episode specifically.
Yeah, but I suppose either way, they basically make an AI version of Semdak from his memories and ask him a bunch of questions about how he tactically takes over planets, if there's any weakness in all of it. And the takeaway is that Earth is more or less in this situation treated as a more advanced race, and he points out the fact that most advanced races have the main weakness of kind of caring so much for the people that they care about that they'll make sacrifices to save people. And then they point out, like, what if a planet doesn't ever give up? And he points out that only one planet has ever not given up, and that's Altea, suggesting, of course, that he destroys planets that he can't, like, fully take over. And that upsets Allura, and kind of she goes off to kind of ponder this. But they at least know tactically how he goes about all of this. I think this is where we get the big Keith and Hunk scene, which was definitely one of the more standout scenes from the season. I really like this scene. Keith knows something's up with Hunk in all of this, and Hunk immediately kind of opens up about the fact that he struggles to believe, I suppose, how badly their return to Earth has gone. He just wanted to see his family again, and kind of blames himself for a lot of this stuff happening. And Keith reveals, kind of surprisingly, that Hunk is the paladin that he's the most impressed with, that even though he is such a coward, so scared about things, he never backs down on anything despite that fear, and that his family needs to be strong again. And basically, Keith and Hunk agree that they're going to go and get his family back for him, and the cadets end up getting involved in this mission, and so on. It's a pretty nice scene. I actually really like this, that Keith isn't overly known for being this type of leader, but he's sort of developing that kind of aspect of his personality. So I did think this was really well done in terms of a big Hunk focus. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I thought that was definitely one of the nicer sort of, scenes that we have, between two characters and probably like, the series or just, specifically those two for sure. Just, getting to see, I guess sort of, I guess this whole episode, so you definitely can see the emotion that Hunk has just because of, not having his family and everyone else having their family. And, all the paladins, or at least the ones that do have family, them sort of really being, close to their families, which I think is just a nice touch and really sort of, bring things together here. But yeah, no, I like seeing, Keith sort of, getting out of his, I guess, his comfort zone as a leader and trying to sort of, understand and just sort of, show more respect and specifically the respect that he has for Hunk. So I thought that was definitely a very nice scene.
hmm we have a couple of small flashbacks of Hunk kind of thinking about his family. It's mainly to get across the great relationship he has with his family, get across the emotion of why he wants to see them again so much. They show little things like I think his parents teaching him how to cook. They show a scene of him with his, are they his siblings or nephews? I don't know if they confirmed that either way. Um, Probably siblings or something like that. I think he's at some point said he has sisters. But either way, they show him just before he's about to go to the Galaxy Garrison to get across this. The main result by the end of this is that they find out where Hunk's family is in one of these kind of working camps, but the Galra have kind of changed how they run them. That the the workers are now like inside the Galra like kind of force field, the perimeter instead of outside, so they won't be able to just infiltrate the base to get them out. So Hunk is forced to wait and kind of remain strong for all of this. And he just kind of, we end the episode with him saying that he will get them out. And then the only other scene from the episode that I think is notable is that Allura and Shiro have a bit of a discussion, and she talks about how, um, you know, there's destruction happening here, but she can also create things, and she's created a new arm for Shiro here, which we see at the start of the next episode. But what were your thoughts on the last couple of bits of this episode? Hunk not being able to get his family out right now.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a very sort of touching scene of him just sort of seeing his parents and not being able to sort of do anything. But, I guess, at least he knows that they are sort of okay and that, hopefully that they can sort of save them. But, it's definitely a sad sort of scene here. But, yeah, no, I guess, they definitely try to balance it out by having, some hope for Shiro and, sort of his, getting a new sort of arm here. So, I guess they sort of go back and forth with trying to balancing out, which is a nice way of doing it.
Episode 10 is Heart of the Line, and we start off with Chiro getting that new arm. They attach the kind of the bit to his shoulder. They power it on. They reveal that it's powered. The struggle was the power, and it's powered by like a human power source. But it immediately kind of goes out of control and begins to hurt Shiro, so they have to stop it. Allura immediately jumps into action. She takes the crystal that's in her tiara thing that she always wears and uses that as the power source, and this ends up working really well. And Shiro has full control over his arm and seems, I suppose, overall kind of in a better condition because of the arm and seemingly what the crystal has kind of done to his body as well. So Shiro seems to be back like 100% more or less at this point. I definitely had. It was definitely an interesting choice for the design of his arm. You know, like I get, they're eventually going to have him fight Semdak, and it's the battle of the guys with the kind of floaty arms. It's a weird design choice for like a hero character, especially in situations where like Shiro is now like the captain of the Atlas, as we'll get to, and you just see his arm floating there, not really doing a ton. It's just like floating there. There's no elbow. I probably would have preferred it if they just created like a standard, like more less Galra like looking arm for him, but it's still a robot arm, rather than feeling the need to go for the crazy like floating forearm situation with some technological explanation. It seems a little bit like awkward to animate, that there's just kind of nothing there in the middle, whereas at least Semdak has the sort of like ball of energy in like the middle that kind of acts as his elbow, whereas like Shiro just doesn't have one. But That's probably me being overly critical about their choice of replacement arm for Shiro. But what were your thoughts on this scene overall? Just like the sudden reveal of like Allura's the crystal in her tiara thing.
Um, I don't know if the reveal of that sort of surprised me so much. I think it's more interesting that she chose to use it in this moment here. I guess it's, I don't know. I'm sure it probably signifies something pretty significant with just her sort of, how she thinks about just sort of, I guess, just being Altean. I mean, that is, I'm going to assume like a artifact from, Altea that doesn't exist anymore. So I think it's definitely a very sort of important moment for her. And, I think it's, sure, obviously definitely sort of appreciates, it in general. So yeah, but I think it is interesting the design that they chose for the arm. I mean, I don't know if the floatingness bothers me as much as just sort of the design of it itself. I think it seems like I don't know, it definitely seems like it's overly big, which didn't should be. I don't know, maybe there was one of the other designs that we saw that they had sort of worked on that could have worked out better. But I don't know. Yeah, I thought it would have been fine if he had, the way that he had his arm before wasn't bad at all. It's just the fact that it was, Gara Tech was the issue with that one, of course. So if they would have had something like that, but, with this new sort of, power source, I thought that would have been fine. I mean, it definitely does seem awkward when you see it sometimes and it's just sort of there sort of floating. I mean, yeah, it's going to be there for, the battle that he has with Sindak eventually, but it definitely doesn't seem like it's on the same sort of class as Sindak's arm. So I don't know, its usefulness is sort of like negated, I think, even if it, does serve some sort of battle purpose.
Yeah, like, the significance of Allura, like, using that crystal for this situation, in that it almost seemed like the tiara thing is kind of useless now without the crystal, or in some way. Like, my interpretation is that like Shiro in a way has been the one who's like sacrificed the most for like the coalition to make everything happen. That him escaping from the Galra was what started all of this, allowed Voltron to be kind of formed again, because he escaped, the team sort of formed around him, and then he was more or less, like, quote unquote, killed in action at the end of season 2, defeating Zarkon. All this crazy stuff has happened, and he's come back, but now he's still missing an arm. It felt like, in a way, like this is her, like he's not a paladin anymore, but this is something I can do for him while he's kind of suffering. I assume there's maybe an intent to potentially have Allura find out about what happened with Adam, and this be like something to help him while he deals with all of this. But I think it's the only problem here is just the sense of like there's no real reaction to all of this beyond just that like Shiro has a new arm. Like the emotional, I suppose, aspect of like this very personal thing to Allura being like the power source of it for Shiro, or the significance behind like why Allura got so, I suppose, invested in wanting to make this for Shiro, wasn't fully explained enough. In that, like, if not for the Allura Lance thing, you'd almost think like this is like Shiro Allura romance, but obviously it's not that. So, that was my only kind of issue with the scene. It's just kind of like another one of the things that Voltron has often done when they just kind of do something but don't really explain it or like do much of a reaction to it. But we'll move on. They want to infiltrate these structures to find out what they are before they can come up with a plan to actually like destroy them and make a big counterattack. And they come up with this whole plan. There's a sniper team, there's a ground unit, and I think for the first time in a while we've had just like this proper like military like execution thing. I thought this was really well done. Lance is like the main sniper here. Hunk is like holding the stairs with his big blaster. Paige, Keith, and Allura are like on the ground, like with the wolf and stuff like that, and going in. I thought this was some really cool kind of on the ground action that it's kind of what I've been looking for, to like have all the paladins come across as like really powerful and so on. The result of all of this is that they find out that all of these structures are Zyforge cannons, which I can't remember what exact season debuted them, but we've seen them before as like the main enemy of one of the seasons. Might have been 3 or 4. But yeah, what were your thoughts on this first kind of part of the episode to find out what the structures were?
Yeah, no, I thought that was definitely really cool. Just the way that they went about sort of planning the whole sort of setup for it and the scenes, and just sort of how Lance was sort of keeping track of them, and of course how they use Cosmos, the Cosmic Wolf. I think it's always cool to see how they have so well integrated him into, I guess, just sort of the plot in general, which makes you wonder what they would do if they didn't have a teleporting wolf on their side. But no, I think it definitely, was a nice sort of action set piece that didn't involve huge robots or anything.
hmm Then they come up with the main plan, which is that there are 6 of these cannons about to be constructed, so they have to stop 6 things at once. It seems impossible, but they come up with the conclusion that if they bring the lines, 1 line per base, and then the MFEs taking the final one, they could actually get it done. So Shiro believes that they can do it because they should now, as fully realized paladins, be able to call the lines from wherever they are in the universe to where they are. That is something that's happened before when they've been in danger. They should be able to do it at will now, and that's the plan. We see the MFE pilots take one of the paladins to one of the other bases before they go on their mission, and Veronica transports Lance by ground to the first base. And just before they leave, we get one of our Lance and Allura moments of going into the final dangerous battle. Allura comes over, they both kind of blush at each other, they're both kind of awkward. Allura just says, stay safe out there, and it's a really nice moment with Veronica saying that, she thinks Allura actually likes him back. So the most clear-cut scene of they're going for this, I think, right now. But what's your take on the whole Lance Allura thing at this point?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have, set up enough that it could actually sort of be a thing in the future, which I guess, with what they've had in the past, and, Lance obviously liking her, wouldn't be, something that's out of the blue or anything. Whether there'll be sort of like enough time to actually sort of develop that into anything sort of serious. I don't know. They definitely don't seem like that's going to ever be sort of the focus of any of the relationships that they have ongoing, just because, it just seems like there's too much other sort of like universe, world ending sort of catastrophes that are happening for them to ever sort of like settle down at any point. But, it's definitely something that you could see them sort of setting up that is definitely going to happen in sort of like the future, after the show, that we'll never really sort of see. So I think that, they definitely could work that out. But them having the plan for sort of taking back and stopping the Zyforge cannons, I think, it's a nice way of doing it, and sort of, showing that they're more realized now that they should be able to do, a lot more than they previously thought, which, they say on and on throughout, I guess, the last couple episodes here.
The last part of this episode is that all of the paladins kind of begin to meditate as they're being brought to the bases. They all connect with their lines. Lance has a bit of struggle initially because they're attacked because they're going by ground, but the others all get their lines to come from Saturn to where they are. Lance at the very last minute kind of gets Red to kind of appear before him, just as it seems like he and Veronica are about to be taken out. But just as it thinks the plan is like fully working, and they properly execute the attack, suddenly the defenses come online, and it seems like Semdak is completely ready for them, which turns out to be the case, because right at the end of the episode, it's revealed that Sonda betrayed them, leaked the plan, and all of the Zyforge cannons are basically launching successfully. And the last moment of the episode is them forming Voltron, but it getting hit by all of the cannons kind of converging on Voltron. For a second, like, based on some of the visuals of Voltron as it was getting hit by this, I thought they were going to like full on destroy Voltron, the way that it looked like Voltron was cracking in the middle, but they just went for the splits apart the combination, but still immediately taking out Voltron gets across like how crazy things are here. But what were your thoughts on these big reveals right at the end of this episode?
Yeah, they definitely made it seem like that could have been the end of Voltron. I mean, it definitely seemed like it could have, it had enough power, and they do mention later on how they can't really take like a direct hit from that, despite Voltron being really sort of powerful here. But yeah, no, it definitely puts them in sort of dire straits here, and with the reveal of Sanda sort of betraying them, which is, I don't know, is almost sort of not unexpected, because that just sort of seems to happen here. Someone always does something for what they think is the greater good. Just sort of adds to the intensity of these last couple episodes here, which I think they did a really good job of sort of ramping it up for the most part until maybe one part at the end.
Mm-hmm. So episode 11 is called Trial by Fire, and the episode starts off with the fact that the Paladins and the Lions have been captured by Semdak. I believe they're on board his main ship. And Semdak immediately goes against the deal that Sanda made with him, which was the Lions for like the freedom of Earth and the Paladins. He immediately just kind of has her imprisoned with the other Paladins. So he just has everything, and Sanda gets nothing out of this deal. So she's been betrayed in all of this, even though she made some bad decisions, but there were some good intentions behind them. And the Paladins talk to her and Sanda. She talks about how she was lied to. She just wanted to protect Earth, and that is Semdak's plan, is to actually destroy Earth. And he's going to use the cannons to do that. This is where the Shiro, Sam, and so on, Karan, begin to bring up the fact that they need the Atlas to launch here. This is the only chance that they actually have. And the only chance to power the Atlas is going to be to divert power from the shields, which is the only thing that they have that's like really, really like powerful, and they have to do that. And it seems like I suppose we'll get to that in a second. But like, what were your thoughts on how quickly they just went with the whole, oh yeah, Sanda made a deal, and immediately Semdak's gone against the deal?
I mean, I guess it's not sort of unexpected. I mean, Sendak, he's always about sort of like destruction and sort of seeing things through to the end. So I don't know, from our perspective of seeing how he operates, and I guess just most of the Galra operate, it's not too surprising. But I guess if you keep in mind that she doesn't really know at all about their tactics, or doesn't seem to have put any effort to learning about anything that Sam has been saying this whole sort of time here. She just sort of is completely sort of caught off guard here, which is, I don't know, I guess is unfortunate, but it's just sort of, I don't know, it almost seems sort of typical of how that sort of would work out here. But yeah, no, it's definitely, it just adds to all of the sort of direness of the situation that they have here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they take the shields down to power the Atlas. They send out the MFEs to sort of like guard the Atlas as it launches, but the power fails right at the last second, and it's at this point Karan remembers that he still has the crystal, which was made from the old castle as it was destroyed, saving the universe from the whole collapsing black hole sciencey stuff they explained at the end of last season. It was definitely a little bit of a weird moment in that, like, I think most fans were like immediately aware, like, okay, that's going to be the power source to the next thing. It takes the characters like last minute to finally realize that that's a thing. But anyway, of course, they finally do it. That activates, and everyone, like, most people are in their positions, but they're kind of wondering, like, okay, who's actually piloting this whole thing? And everyone's kind of looking towards like Sam. Shiro's also there. But everyone immediately looks towards Shiro to be the captain of the Atlas, and he takes up the role. So I thought that was a really cool moment of just everyone looking at Shiro and him assuming the role of like captain of the Atlas. It was a really nice hero moment for him. Like, he's not the Black Paladin anymore, but here is him, I think, taking up the role that was sort of expected of him. But given that Sanda's kind of, obviously betrayed humanity, Sam, you almost thought that he would do it, but you kind of realized that, like, okay, yeah, he is more of the engineer. Shiro is perfectly suited. He's always been the best, like, leader of Voltron. This is the perfect position for him to be in. So that was a really cool hero moment for Shiro to just be seen as the captain with I think it's Karan who actually calls him captain for the first time, which is nice as well, because it's almost like the reverse of, like, with the Castle of Lions. Like, Karan was always the one sort of leading it in a way, but now he's just like the helmsman in a way, and Shiro's the captain. What were your thoughts on this moment, the launching of the Atlas using the crazy crystal?
Yeah, no, I thought that was nice, and yeah, you're right. It's just sort of like, of course, we're gonna think that's gonna be the next power source for the next sort of thing here. But I guess it's one of those things in the heat of the moment, and especially I guess since Koran is the one who actually has it, that it takes a little bit for them to sort of realize what they actually can use here. But no, I think out of all the parts for this episodes, I think this was it was good to see Shiro get at least a little bit more sort of play here with him sort of becoming the captain of the Atlas and him being, pretty well suited for this role. Like you mentioned, him just sort of being, sort of the older, more sort of leader, sort of more, commander of actual sort of forces versus, Sam or sort of anyone else in that sort of position right there. So, no, I think it definitely works out well. And, we see how, additionally well it works out later on as well.
So, yeah, this is our new kind of Castle of Lions. So I suppose, what were your thoughts on the design of the Atlas as like our new Castle of Lions? Basically, it's very different, but what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, it definitely is very different. It definitely is more battleship sort of oriented, which I guess is pretty sort of, I guess, typical of how I guess sort of like Earth sort of designs things and whatnot. So it definitely seems like it fits the mold of what we sort of would envision these type of I guess sort of battleships type cruiser type things. Like we're closer towards like I guess sort of the Galra way of sort of like designing things to be sort of battle ready versus Altea, which is more sort of more I guess sort of in stasis with sort of like their environment and their culture, which I guess is just sort of differences in culture in general. But no, overall I think the design is okay. It's definitely very big. Like it seems like it's a lot bigger than the Castle of Lions, even though that was a castle. So I guess they would be relatively the same. I don't know, maybe it's just sort of the dimensions and way is sort of designed being sort of elongated versus top heavy. Is sort of what makes the difference. And I guess when you do see his next sort of transformation, it just sort of emphasizes his scale a bit more so than we've seen with the castle. I don't know. I would be interested in seeing sort of like the scale of these battleship cruisers in comparison to each other, because they're just so massive in general, especially like when you see all the Galra ships sort of come down to Earth for the first time, that they sort of like just sort of like blot out the sky with how big they are. So I don't know, it's kind of hard to get a good idea on just how massive these things are. But no, I think design overall I think is interesting. It works well for what they're sort of trying to do. I mean, the fact that they can fit that many people in it just shows you how sort of, I guess, massive it actually, really is. But no, I think it's definitely pretty interesting. I wonder if they do take it into like space and stuff, like how big of a crew, will they actually have with it, and how will that just work in general?
Yeah, I suppose that's the thing they don't make massively clear, is that they say it in the background, but they never show it to you. But that basically, like, everyone in the entire Galaxy Garrison gets in the Atlas. Like, they completely evacuate the base into this ship. That's how big it is. And even though there's only a couple of people on the bridge, basically, to operate like the main systems, everyone's on board. So that was really kind of cool to see. But yeah, we get this whole kind of like counter-attack scene here, like the MFEs backing up the Atlas, and they begin to take out some of Semdak's ship. This is when the Paladins realize that they have to get out, and that the only way they can do that is by connecting with their lines, but not just to get their lines to come back to them, but also to like remotely control their lines to like break them out and participate in the battle basically while they're stuck in prison. And this is like a callback back to like season 1 with the whole see through the eyes of the line thing, which only Shiro was able to do, and has always been the only one able to do that. Even I think up until this point, we might have seen it like once more maybe after like Shiro's done it, but I don't really think at least regularly any of the other Paladins have been able to do the whole see through the eye of the line thing. But we see everyone do it here, and interestingly they let Hunk be the first one to kind of do it, and then we see gradually everyone do it, and they can basically remotely pilot their lines because their consciousness basically is the lines. They're like literally are that line. So I thought this was a really cool power up to see them get, and that like I suppose the next extension of this is kind of like remotely form Voltron and just like use Voltron from a distance and stuff like that. But what were your thoughts on this as like the complete power up? This is their like completely fully realized paladins here.
Yeah, no, it definitely was nice, and I mean, they have, just out of all the sort of like crazy sort of power ups that we've seen this season specifically, I guess this is the one that, it seems like it would be a natural sort of progression of them as pilots and just their skills in general, being able to sort of remotely control, their lions just from wherever they are. They even have Pidge, I guess, technically talk through the line through to Shiro. I mean, I wasn't sure how that actually sort of worked, but no, they definitely, I don't know, it definitely is cool to see them sort of control their lines remotely. And I don't know, it would be interesting if they were able to sort of form Voltron completely remotely. That seems like that would be like an even like harder step to actually sort of do, but I don't know, maybe they can. So no, it definitely was cool.
Mm-hmm. Last thing is that we get I suppose the last stand of Sonda as we see like full last stand mode. She goes down because she's protecting the kind of defenseless paladins as they're kind of meditating into their lines. She gets hit in the shoulder. She then attacks like Semdak's basically second in command and gets hit in the stomach, and the Black Line eventually saves her from being like just kind of like executed right there on screen. But as the paladins escape from their prisons, they're with Sonda as she dies, and she just dies saying that basically save her. Yeah, so kind of putting her hopes in the paladins when she'd up to now always been the one to sort of not really like put her hope in Voltron. So I don't think it fully redeems the character for making like an ultimately fairly like stupid decision to like just betray, hoping that the evil villain would just like go ahead with her whole plan. But I think they did more or less everything they could to kind of bring her around and give her a somewhat heroic end. So I thought it was a fairly okay use of the character, and that like this is all that we're going to get for this character. Fair enough what you've done with her. But what were your thoughts on the death of Sonda here?
I mean, it was heroic. I'm not sure. It definitely didn't redeem her for me for what she's sort of tried to do, even if she did have sort of the, ideal sort of intentions here. But I don't know. I think her lack of understanding the situation, or I guess at least attempting to understand the situation, because I guess I could have seen her going through with it, even if she did sort of listen to Sam and sort of, got the gist of how the Garo sort of worked here. But it definitely seemed like, at least to me, that she wasn't really sort of trying to understand the situation. She just was going to go with what she thought, was the best for Earth, regardless of any other sort of information here. But I mean, she did make a decent stand at the end, and, it probably did help a bit from them sort of being sort of out of commission, sort of immediately, depending on how, the plot wanted to actually sort of work. So I guess it was an okay end for me. It wasn't anything sort of spectacular.
Mm-hmm. Second last episode 12, is Lion's Pride Part 1. And we get Voltron joins the battle. They form sword and start to take out ships. Then they realize that they have to go for the Zyforge cannons because I think Sam explains that the plan is that Semdak is going to merge the 6 beams together and destroy the planet, and that if even 2 of the beams manage to join and hit Earth, they will destroy the planet. So they have to stop these 6 kind of beams completely at the source. But suddenly it's revealed that where they launched from are also ground-based cannons, so Voltron is really struggling. They can't do anything because there's support from the ground, there's cruisers all over the place, and the cannons themselves. And this is where like the MFEs are constantly getting like, I think there's like 4 or 5 times where like the MFEs go out, have to come back to recharge, and then go straight back out. Because they say the crystal in the castle just recharges them basically immediately. And we get this whole sequence where like they're holding the beam reflectors in front of the beams, and waiting for basically everyone else to kind of either hope that they can shut down the cannons or something like that. And I think at this point the shield finally activates on the Atlas, so the Atlas has a particle barrier as well. But yeah, we've seen stuff like this before, them blocking like some giant beam or laser from hitting a planet. I think even last season we had them protecting that planet from like the solar flare type stuff. So, it's a little bit similar to sort of stuff that we've had before. It's still intense, but it's, they're sort of treading over the same sort of ground in terms of what's technically happening on screen. So a couple of little bits and pieces in these final battles feels a little samey, but it's still, pretty intense. But what were your thoughts on the first part of this episode?
Yeah, no, it definitely is intense. Just the way that they sort of set up the whole sort of stakes of things and how, there's enough beams that'll still sort of get through regardless of what sort of happens here. And then they wind up using the ship with, all the people on it as sort of like the next last line of defense, and you can see it sort of getting lower and lower. So no, I think it definitely is pretty intense how they have it set up, even if it does feel like they sort of are retreading sort of the same sort of orders here. Like it seems like the Doomsday sort of device is always the same sort of setup here, which I don't know. I mean, maybe they could have done something different there, but they've been setting up these cannons for so long, and we know about them and how they work and how Sam sort of worked on them, and so I mean, it just seems like that would be the thing to use here, even if it is similar. Maybe they could have done something different before or something, but no, I think for what it is here, you definitely get across how much is gonna at stake here, and how they keep doing flashbacks to Earth and all the people there, and sort of seeing sort of the beam and the atmosphere, and it's just there definitely is a lot of moving pieces going on here for sure.
Yeah, definitely. When the beam kind of takes out all the lines temporarily, and it's all on the Atlas to kind of defend it, and as you say, they do the cuts down to Earth, and they're directly seeing the Atlas as like the thing that is saving them from being immediately killed. That's really, really intense. Like that's what this whole thing is about, and it's well done. I think it was just a little bit before that when we've sort of seen them deflecting beams up close before. But, Shiro makes the decision at this point that someone needs to get on Semdak's ship to take the power out, and he decides that he's going to go over. So he just jetpacks out of the Atlas, heads straight over to Semdak's ship, and he goes to the crystal and destroys like half of it. The idea is that he doesn't fully get the job done, but sort of like I think he powers down one of the beams, but 5 of them are still active, and he's sort of temporarily unconscious during all of this. But Semdak's ship is going down in all of this. The Lions get back up. I think Lance is up first, then Allura, then everyone else comes in. They, like last ditch, manage to take out all of the cannons like one by one, and just before the Atlas's shields fail, so they manage to stop all of that. But Semdak's ship is still heading for Earth and is going to hurt people if it crashes. This is where we get the big Shiro versus Semdak, the battle of the floaty guys. And also a reference back to like season 1 where they had their big rivalry. It's a pretty cool fight on the hull of like a ship that's going down into Earth. As you can tell, like Semdak has more power, but kind of Shiro's more athletic. Shiro's kind of constantly on the defensive, but kind of gets a few strikes in. But the ship does go down. I think the Lions come in to sort of ease it down into an uninhabited area. But Shiro is kind of knocked unconscious as they kind of hit the ground. Semdak is going in to finish the job. And then really suddenly, out of absolutely nowhere, Black Lion comes in, teeth comes out of the mouth and just, basically cuts Semdak in half. I didn't really like that. That was Shiro's fight. I feel you should have given him the finish of that fight rather than just like Keith out of nowhere, who doesn't really have a connection to Semdak. But I also get the idea that this is Keith saving Shiro. They're doing the whole idea of like those two know each other well, and they've both helped each other over the course of their lives. And with this, they have effectively defended Earth. They've taken in the Zyforge cannons. They've defeated basically all of Semdak's fleet. Semdak is dead. His ship is down. They've won, and then this meteorite thing starts crashing down from the sky. Is how this episode ends. But Greg, what were your thoughts on, I suppose, Shiro's solo mission here and his fight with Semdak and Semdak's death?
Yeah, no, I mean, Shiro, going in to sort of be the hero is sort of what Shiro sort of does. I mean, I don't know, I guess it's sort of interesting to see that he would do that, considering he is sort of the captain of the ship, but I guess he would be, one of the more sort of qualified people to actually sort of, infiltrate a Garwa ship and actually, expect to make it back out alive. So I guess, there is a reason why he sort of went to do this. But no, his fight with Sendek, I mean, it's sort of expected. We get the sort of similarities between the two of them and the history and the rivalry that they've sort of building up the whole sort of, the whole series, the whole show. So I don't know. It was nice to see. I think, it definitely was, on Sendek's side, like Shiro definitely didn't have enough power in his arm or his, I guess, sort of abilities in general to sort of really sort of combat sort of Sendek with his sort of arm, which just seems massively more sort of developed just for the sake of sort of battling. I mean, it's not really sort of a real hand at this point. So that's sort of how that went. But I don't know. I think it definitely was out of nowhere where Keith sort of came to sort of, end the fight here. And I guess it was really to show that he did, have it in the save sort of Keith after everything. I mean, the save Shiro after everything that he has sort of done here. So I don't know. I guess it sort of works here, but I think it like you, it would have been cool if Shiro was sort of the one to sort of have the win of this fight just because of, their history in general. But, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose I was just expecting, like, given that they did the whole, like, Allura gave him the crystal to power his arm, that there'd be some sort of a, like arm type power up where like he would like, get the kind of surprise victory using like the power of this thing that was just given to him. But I suppose they went a slightly different direction with what they do in the next episode. So yeah, episode 13, Lion's Pride Part 2. They get Hunk brings Shiro back to the Atlas, and it seems like he's out of commission. Their enemy is in fact a giant Voltron-like mech thing. It doesn't seem to transform, but it is a huge robot thing, and it has like these swords that are giving off all this purple energy, and it fends off the lines, like the uncombined lines, with ease. The lines are low on energy. They're all exasperated at the fact that they just gave everything to fend off Semdak's attack, and now here's this thing come in. The Atlas does cover them, and Shiro does manage to get back onto the bridge to kind of take command of the situation. They form Voltron. We get the dual blade power up here, which is Pidge and Lance using their Bayards together. But again, Voltron's pushed back, and it gets stabbed, and their energy is getting drained again. And one of the only real hints given to us about what exactly is going on here is a couple of mentions from the team about this draining ability feeling like the Komar, which I believe was the big technological thing from the end of season 2 that Hagar was powering, and that's when like Allura went in and fought Hagar, and the whole magic thing happened for the first time. So this is where it, I think, connects all of this to Hagar, just with the mention of the Komar a few times. We see the MFEs give support to allow kind of Voltron to get back up again. I think Pidge activates like a wrist cannon at this point. It's definitely some of the best like Voltron mech action that we have. It's very fluid animation. They're not just doing the giant attack type thing. There's actually some like choreography to the action here, and it's just this huge battle of basically this thing is able to take on Voltron and the Atlas 2-on-1 with no real problem, and it doesn't seem like they stand a chance at all. So what were your thoughts on this? I suppose just the first section of this fight, where it's just basically this thing coming in and just wrecking everyone.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like, I don't know, it definitely seemed like it came out of nowhere, just the way that it sort of, came into play, and it's just so sort of overpowering the team here. It almost makes you wonder sort of like, this thing, whatever it was just sort of waiting, and I'm sure we'll find out more about it, and we do learn a little bit more about it by the end of the episode. But yeah, definitely, I don't know, I don't think it's something that I was expecting to see after everything, after the main sort of battle here. You almost sort of think that everything might be okay for just a little bit, but it just goes to show you that there are more threats out in the world, and there are sort of other characters in play, even if this main force, or what we think is the main force of Gaora, we don't really know, since things have changed in the years that they have been away. There's a lot of different things in play, and I guess we're just sort of finding them out now.
Mm-hmm. Voltron gets basically stabbed into the ground, and I think this is like one of the first times where it just is really clear that Voltron has like been like pierced by something and gets like completely drained. Like the lights go out in Voltron completely, and the paladins are down. And Shiro has to step up. He has to save the other paladins. And suddenly he does the whole like Allura thing that she used to do at the castle, where she like connects with the ship's energy, except it's the Atlas this time and Shiro. And he takes them up really high into the skies, I suppose, like to do this in cover. Connects with the crystal and the whole ship, and then starts this transformation sequence as the Atlas transforms into a giant mech. Like obviously, like if you watch the animation of the transformation carefully, it's a huge cheat. Like they do this whole thing where like the legs, I think it is, they just do this like cut. These huge panels glow and suddenly become like thighs and like lower legs and stuff like that. The hands just kind of like appear in light or something like that. It's overall like really really cool, but like it's kind of like I don't think we're getting a toy of this, guys. I don't think they really fully planned out the full transformation, but this huge ship has transformed into a giant robot, comes down, and this is where like the whole size thing is like crazy, where like I was like, okay, the Atlas is big, but like how big is it? And then it's like it dwarfs like Voltron and this new mech. It just is so huge, but it's also fairly slow. But it allows the paladins to kind of get back up as well during all of this. What were your thoughts on this? This really came out of nowhere. Shiro being able to transform the Atlas.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know. I was reading some things where people were saying like, I guess there was some sort of like foreshadowing of just sort of Altean technology to do this sort of thing, but I don't know. I guess I don't know. I didn't really see it coming. It definitely seemed like I've seen this happen on some other shows, but those shows were just so absurd that it sort of made sense. Where just like a giant ship just got even bigger and bigger and bigger. Just to the point of ridiculousness. But I don't know, it seemed like the show was a bit more grounded maybe to do some of that immediately. And I don't know, the transformation of the actual Atlas, I mean, I don't know, it's interesting. Like I think they showed, like you said, like some parts of it just completely just sort of come back off and just sort of form back in, just sort of form different parts of the body and whatnot. So I don't know, I mean, even the transformation of Voltron itself can be a bit sort of hokey at times with how it it actually works. It's not, I don't know, this is Altean science and magic, so magic sort of covers sort of like everything as far as like sort of how things can actually work and transform with people actually being in them. So this always sort of odd, but I mean, I don't know, it's interesting. The design of it isn't too bad when it's sort of fully sort of realized. Yeah, it is kind of slow, which kind of makes sense for its massive sort of size that it actually is. Like it's not going to be as nimble as Voltron is, and even Voltron, I sometimes think like, how is it actually as nimble as it actually is? But I guess it's all sort of relative to their sort of capabilities and their power output. So I don't know, it's definitely interesting. I don't know, I wonder how or if it'll get used later on this in the season, in next season. I mean, it seems like it's something that really really has to be like needed to actually be used in any sort of way, or has to have like something of equal sort of like measure in order for them to actually sort of see the worth in actually sort of doing it, especially since it puts everyone that's in the castle at risk. So it definitely seems like it's a huge gamble in itself, but I don't know, it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, it's just like such a shock. And then surprisingly they just have the enemy mech like power up. It does this solid light thing where like it can make itself bigger, but because it's solid light it can actually attack the Atlas. It doesn't quite make it as big as the Atlas, but it's like 80% of the size of it, and it knocks it back, and it's now suddenly just this mech thing hammering away on the Atlas. Like the Atlas doesn't really get that much of a chance to like fight back. It doesn't hit its giant punch, but like it sends it flying back a little bit. the giant laser blast from the Atlas, it completely dodges, and then it just begins to steal the Atlas's energy, and this allows Voltron to get back up. And really suddenly, it feels really weirdly paced, but like they just decide that, oh yeah, we know the weakness now. We're gonna have to hit the core when it opens up when it's using its big attack, and the Keith and Lance use their Bayards to do the whole booster rocket thing. They get the sword out, and they just like basically take the thing by surprise. Like come at it full speed, stab it right through the middle, and that's what like ends the fight really suddenly. I suppose we'll talk a little in a minute about what they do after the fight, but just some of the fight pacing was weird here. About like big Atlas power up, it transforms, is immediately defeated, and then Voltron, who had been just had no counter attack against this thing, and they suddenly like, oh yeah, that's the weakness, and they basically say the plan and then immediately execute the plan. No problem. They just take it out. So it either felt really rushed, or they're maybe setting up the fact that like, okay, they now know how to defeat these things. They're probably going to be facing a lot of these potentially next season. That they don't want to make it like that big of a threat. But it just made it feel a bit weird that this is the big kind of final boss, and it's like the most sudden finish to a fight ever. But what were your thoughts on how they ended the actual big mech fights here?
I don't know. I mean, it did seem quick the way that they sort of went about it as far as just sort of pacing. I mean, I don't know. It seemed like it's something that they probably would have analyzed earlier, and thought that this would have been its weakness, just because they definitely focused on it when it did its shot. So, they sort of were, at least applying to me as the viewer that was probably like its one, if any, sort of weak point. So I don't know. I think it's something that they could have like mentioned earlier, but just didn't have, sort of like the ability to actually sort of do it, or they just, they couldn't pull out the super boosters or the super rockets in time earlier. And then, at this sort of dire moment, then they could have done it. Something like that would have probably worked better for me as far as how they actually sort of set up defeating it. But, them defeating it, specifically didn't really bother me too much. It definitely did seem like the point of, having the big sort of Atlas bot here was not as sort of like as meaningful as it could be. I mean, it's definitely a cool sort of set piece to actually see happen. But I don't know, in the overall sort of scheme of things, it didn't really do too much. I mean, it did give him time to sort of recuperate, but I don't know, it felt like it could have done the same sort of thing as far as just it shooting its own sort of weapons at that sort of time. So I don't know, but no, I guess they definitely did go about it pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, after this, the Atlas is completely offline. The mech seems to reactivate, but they quickly figure out it's a self-destruct sequence, and Paige figures out that, yeah, this will destroy half of the Earth if we let it go off here. So even though they're completely out of power, basically, the Five Lions have to drag this, destroyed mech up into space for it to go off in there, and hope that they can get away in time. And the way they shoot it, and like the music and everything about it, it really makes it seem like this is the sacrifice of the Paladins. Like they are killing themselves to do this, and that they're accepting of that. In that they close up on all the Paladins' faces. They have the really tragic music playing. They sort of take the like explosion sound effect out, so it's just the music and like the looks at each of the Paladins' faces. The explosion goes off, and they're clearly caught in it, but then they immediately cut all the tension away by just all of the lines completely like doesn't look like they have much damage on them. They're all together, falling to earth, and while you don't know what actually has happened to the Paladins, just the fact that the lions seem okay makes it feel like there's not much going on. Like, it was still emotional. They do the whole thing where like they kind of fall from the sky, kind of glowing the color of what each line is, and they sort of land in their like natural habitat. Like Lance lands in water in blue, Pidge lands in a forest in green, Hunk in like a mountainous area in yellow, that sort of thing. But that's kind of more or less where it ends, as like it's later revealed that they were just kind of unconscious in all of this. This felt a little bit like it kind of wasn't needed as such. This is another thing they've done a couple of times in like the final battle. Like they defeat the enemy, but there's still this bomb thing. Like last season, it was the universe basically as a bomb. This season, it's this thing as a bomb. And especially when they really weren't going to have much stakes associated with it, it felt kind of thrown in a little bit. Um, because again, they did the crazy emotional thing, like this is their sacrifice, and then immediately it's not actually a sacrifice. What were your thoughts on this, the whole self-destruct sequence?
Yeah, for me, it was very overly sort of dramatic. That's definitely something that I noted when they did it. It made me think that, this might actually sort of be it, which it can't be because there's another season, and unless they're going to do something really crazy, that just wouldn't make any sense. But they definitely, out of all the sort of like parts so far, this definitely seemed like it was ramped up to like the next level of the emotional sort of spectrum here, where they might not survive it, or they'll be very sort of badly sort of injured and like out of commission for a period of time, just after this. So I don't know, I definitely don't think it needed all of that, considering that we do see that they're fine. I mean, they didn't come out of it unscathed. They definitely are sort of injured, but it doesn't look like any of them are so badly messed up that they won't be ready by whenever the next sort of catastrophe happens in the next season. So I don't know. It definitely it added something to it, but maybe wasn't exactly the right sort of thing to add.
Yeah, like even the lions, like we clearly saw like Voltron get like pierced by the swords a few times. Like none of the lions had any like obvious damage on them. Like should like the back of like green and red not have had like kind of sword marks in them because they were cut in the shoulder a few times? Like little things like that are just kind of like you, because Voltron's never been that badly damaged where like it's been like cut apart. Like we don't even know if like the lions like heal themselves as such, because it's always just been like they're defeated by like their energy being sucked out or something like that, or the lions basically go unconscious because they're sentient and stuff like that. But we'll move on. We basically cut to the aftermath of this. It's like a week later or something like that. Shiro's giving a big speech in memory of everyone who was killed in the kind of battle around Earth and space. We obviously get a focus in on Adam's name and kind of a picture in all of this. We see a montage of characters like Matt returning home here. It's a very hopeful speech about Earth as like basically Earth meets the rest of the coalition. It seems like they completely open up Earth to the entire coalition, all the other planets. All these species come in, like Alkarians and the Blades are there, and we end with the Shiro saying like they're the defenders of the universe in all of this. We then cut to the Paladins in hospital with their family. So Hunk is back with his family. And then as a complete surprise, Shay walks in the door and hugs Hunk, which is nice. Yeah, it looks like together all the other species plus the humans rebuild Earth. And it seems like Earth is now this kind of central point for the coalition, in that like I think we saw Repid Sal there, like opening up a food stand or something like that.
Yeah.
And so on. And then the last scene before the very last scene is Crollia and Keith at Keith's father's grave. It was revealed earlier in the season that Keith's father died because he was a firefighter going back into a burning building to save someone. So that's how he was killed. But we get the scene of them at the grave as Akshia just randomly appears behind them, and we don't really see her interact with Keith, but she's there close to him, and that's meant to be somewhat notable. So let's discuss this stuff before now. A lot of returning characters, like little cameo bits at the end over Shiro's speech. What were your thoughts on this as like an ending to this whole Attack on Earth plot?
Yeah, I think it was nice just to see how they chose to conclude it. Giving Shiro sort of this speech here, I guess sort of really sort of showing, I guess, sort of the position he will be in for like the future season, and I don't know, all that. So I don't know. I think it's nice that they I don't know. They definitely set up Earth to be sort of this place where everyone's sort of coming to join and I guess support, which I guess sort of makes sense when that's where most of the paladins are from. So I guess it kind of makes sense, and it's just that's just how these shows sort of work. Humans are sort of the basis of everything. But yeah, no, it's a nice little scenes here, nice little cameos. I wonder, now that everyone seems to be together, what how they're going to sort of set up everyone in the future for working, if everything's sort of going to be Earth sort of based, sort of centralized, or I guess I guess it could really be anything now that they have the ability to sort of warp places and whatnot. So they really can go anywhere without too much sort of time issue as we've seen in the past recently.
Yeah, because I suppose they kind of casually inserted in here that like Allura can open up wormholes using the Atlas. I think that was the scene they showed in the middle of all that montage.
Yeah.
It was either like something connected to the Atlas or the Atlas itself. That was interesting. But yeah, the fandom's main response to this is it's like, oh no, oh awesome, look, Matt is hot now. That was the the entire fandom's reaction to all of this, and that like, oh yeah, Matt has actually grown up 3 years and is now like an adult, so he's all like buff now. So that was interesting, and everyone really wants to see him some more now. I don't know. Do we know the kind of other character who was next to him?
I think so. Isn't that the one that Lance didn't know the name of?
Oh yeah, Schleck or something like that.
I don't remember her name, but yeah, it's the one that he couldn't remember.
Yeah, so yeah, I think it's one of those people from the water planet from like season 3, and yeah, so that's all that stuff. Yeah, a lot of different cameos. Earth is open for business, or so it seems. And then the very last scene, they finally kind of resolve the confusion about like this mech, like where did it come from? What was it related to? Why did it come at this point in time? They find out that they found the head of this creature after the explosion, and they bring Allura in because it's important for her to see this, and they open it up and it's revealed that it's an one Altean piloting this mech, and it is specifically said that this is the power source for it. So it's an Altean who is actually the source of why it was so powerful, and it's this obviously shocking reveal right at the end. It's one of those ones where you need to think about it a little bit to really kind of get why it's so shocking, because then you connect it with what Calivan said about the colony being empty. Hagar wasn't in this season at all. Lotor wasn't in this season. And then we know from the colony stuff that a lot of the selection process was selecting people who were specifically like powerful with like quintessence manipulation and stuff like that. So that sort of explains like people who are suited to be like pilots of these mech-like things, and especially with stuff like the whole Ranveg super weapon situation. It's still kind of out there. I don't know if they'll come back to that at this point. But either way, there's still a whole crazy quintessence kind of plot still at play in all of this. But what was your reaction to this as the big cliffhanger?
Yeah, no, it's definitely, it starts bringing things together and definitely shows you where next season's going to go and how, I guess, important Alteans will be. I mean, it makes you wonder if all of them have been taken. Is that why we didn't sort of see them there? Or was it just the ones that were previously sort of selected? So, I don't know. It's definitely going to be important for sure.
Yeah. I'm wondering with this, like, when they inform Ramel about this, will she like know this person? I think that's potentially an easy way to kind of get this plot started, that she potentially knows who this is, or can like confirm that this is definitely someone from the colony, and we can like move on from there. It obviously, like, getting into some speculation to finish things off with for the last season. Season 8 is the last season, 13 episodes to go. Hagar would be the main obvious thing, and that they specifically noted that she's kind of been missing for the past 3 years doing something. She has been behind the making of the row beasts from like the previous seasons. They mentioned the Komar, that's a Hagar project. She and Lotor potentially could be working together now. That's why the whole Altean thing could come into play. Plus, they still haven't like ever since she got the powers from Oriande, they haven't really used her using those powers all that much. So there's still so much to come with her, and I definitely lean towards like I think if she is in the final season, Hagar is the bigger villain than potentially even the return of Lotor. I think she would be the main one rather than him. But what is your take on who you think is going to be the main threat of season 8? Do you think it will be Hagar, or will Lotor return and he'll take the focus?
No, I mean right now I definitely would say Hagar would be more of the focus, just because they've clearly have been developing her, with her sort of abilities and just sort of her character in general in the past. I mean, sure, Lothar could come back just because no one ever seems to really sort of die, and they always sort of have some way, for the most part, of coming back if the plot sort of suits them. But from what he's done before, I don't see him being as interesting. As Hagar would be, with her being an Altean, and just sort of her abilities that she has, and sort of what she can sort of muster. So no, I think I would prefer her to be sort of the main sort of last sort of antagonist that we have here. I mean, I'm sure there won't be the solve of all the conflicts in the universe. I'm sure there'll always be something else going on, but I think for this series that would be a cool way to sort of bring it all the way around.
Yeah. And I suppose the other thing on my mind kind of going into next season is that, like, it seems like in that final battle they really made a point at saying like that, like, Voltron was just, like, completely outclassed in this final battle. Like, they got the victory just out of speed and the fact that Voltron can still deliver a powerful blow, but that in a just out-and-out one-on-one fight, Voltron was gone there. So I don't know if they're going to make that a plot point of just that the Paladins are really going to have to make some sort of an extra power boost, or like develop in some way to make Voltron stronger, or they'll do a proper full-on upgrade of Voltron where they actually like work and enhance the lines in some way. But it kind of feels like they have to do that, especially if they do some sort of reveal where like this is just like one of many of these mechs and they're suddenly going to be facing these a lot next season. It seems like they could be in a lot of trouble. Now, I think in the final montage they showed them working on the Atlas some more. I think more or less giving us the impression that like the transformation was like, okay, the first time using it, but that this was the Atlas like prototype almost, and that now with the Alcarians there and stuff like that, the Atlas is going to be so much more better going through the final battle. The shields will be better, weaponry will be better, and I assume the transformed mode will be better. So what are your thoughts on, I suppose, just Voltron and how, and just the situation of like, how strong is Voltron, I suppose, going into the last season, given what they've done?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. I mean, based on this last battle, it definitely seems like it's not in the same sort of, I guess, class. Or, I mean, it almost seems like it was before when they were sort of facing, Lothar for a bit, where the maneuverability that they had in Voltron, which, I don't know, it's a giant robot, so it always seems kind of hard to gauge that, but it just wasn't as nimble as it really sort of could be. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just the design of it sort of leads you to thinking that way, that it's not going to be, that nimble versus, this new bot, whatever it is, was definitely, designed for the effectiveness of being sleek and being smooth and being fast and being able to sort of, get around different things. Like, it had no trouble sort of dodging most things, and it could also sort of defend as well, using its blades. So it definitely seems like there will be, something needed to be done to Voltron, or maybe it'll get another one of its upgrades somehow that'll sort of, work with it towards this next sort of thing. I mean, I don't know if it'll have like another mode or something maybe, or I don't know. There's they could do almost anything with it if this is really going to be something that they have to combat with. And the same thing I guess could be said for the Atlas. I mean, I don't know, that might be a harder thing to sort of, develop, a huge giant robot to be more maneuverable. But I guess you could say the same thing about Voltron. So I don't know. It'll be pretty cool to see where they go with it. I mean, maybe they'll just, now that they have more resources in the whole world and other worlds are involved, maybe they can just make more fleets of Atlases. Just sort of have a whole sort of squadron of them. So who knows?
Yeah, they have used the power of all 5 Bayards activated, haven't they?
At the same time?
Yeah, that was the giant flaming sword, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Is it?
I think so. I don't know if I remember that correctly, because it was either that was just the sword really powered because like the black on its own, or it might have been that. I'm not actually sure if they've used all 5 at the same time. Because they definitely haven't done like every combination. Like they did a lot of like, here's 2 people using it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's been any with 3 or even 4. So there's probably something like that where like, yeah, in the final battle they're going to be in trouble. All of the ports open up. And then that's probably when you'll see some sort of a like crazy transformation where it gets like a whole extra layer of armor or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Something like that. It morphs together with the Atlas and they form a giant, even gianter thing.
Oh man.
Yeah. Earth transforms into a. But who knows? I suppose the other thing is just like, obviously next season is the last season. We need to be thinking about like how are they actually going to end this? Like what is the nature of, I suppose, the final battle, because it's still up in the air like where like the Galra Empire actually is at this point in time. Like they're still a threat because they're scattered and they were so powerful, but there doesn't seem to be any structure anymore. That Zethrid and Ezor have been like, defeated to a degree. Semdak's now been defeated. Who's still out there, except obviously Hagar and potentially Lotor? Are we more or less saying that the Galra have been defeated in the series, or are we going to still do one final thing that kind of completes that? As well as that, like, I've always felt that we still have to get back to the idea of like removing the Galra like over reliance on quintessence to like keep them alive for so long. That's felt like a kind of negative influence on what's made them so kind of evil, that they need to get away from that, and that they need to address the whole evil quintessence, even evil sentient quintessence thing that is kind of at the heart of why Hagar is evil in the first place. So I can see them having that fight again like we got in the flashback episode with the previous paladins. But what do you see as being like the end game of Voltron in the final season?
I don't know. That's tough to say. I mean, yeah, defeating Hagar seems like the obvious one, but I don't know. It seems the fact that if they still need sort of like the whole sort of coalition, that there's just so much sort of Galra sort of out there just because of how long that they have been around, that there's enough other groups of organizations of I guess just sort of groupings of Galra, sort of I guess military, you could say, that they're still worth sort of fighting. Like I don't know if there will be sort of like a peaceful sort of ending. It might just be sort of a ongoing thing after they deal with Hagar, if that is the next thing that's coming on. So I don't know. I could just see them getting to a place where they've sort of successfully defended Earth, is sort of maybe it's sort of like like it already seems to be sort of the beacon of sort of the universe for peace and good or whatever, and they're sort of just trying to branch it out from there. But there's no sort of like clear thing. They're not going to give us like this is the happily ever after at the end of it, which might be for the best.
Yeah, like initially I'd be leaning towards stuff like some sort of a peace agreement between like Altea, depending on what they do with I suppose once they get all the Alteans back into play and realize that they can actually continue as a species, like a peace agreement between Altea and the Galra Empire, or whatever they decide to call it if the Empire ends up disbanding, and just ending that war which has kind of started everything here, in that Dibazal is gone as a planet, basically. It's been ruined by the whole portal thing that was opened up there. Altea has been destroyed. Both of these species are basically without homeworlds because of all of this. That would seem like a fitting kind of final thing. And a couple of seasons ago, it felt like we were going to get there by that peace coming between Allura and Lotor. They could still potentially do that if they want to redeem Lotor, but I struggle to see how they're going to do that in only a couple of episodes, to have him return, potentially turn on his mother, kind of save the day type thing and turn it around. So are they just going to have to like almost give up on the Galra as just always being this kind of negative influence on the galaxy and switch to like humans and Alteans are the new kind of protectors of the galaxy type thing? I'm not entirely sure, but I assume it'll be a relatively happy ending, in that I think you're probably going to have your Allura Lance like kiss and stuff like that. You'll set up Keith and Oxia together, like things like that. Hunk and Shay. You know, I hope I suppose I hope they give enough time in terms of like an epilogue, and it's not just the really quick kind of let's just wrap everything up, boom, boom, boom. And I prefer a more like extended epilogue, to fully see, I suppose, an idea about where the characters are at the end, rather than just like, oh yeah, and all these relationships we've only barely set up are actually like a thing, but you're not going to get to see them.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on, I suppose, kind of epilogue type stuff? What do you think they kind of have to do for like a satisfying ending to Voltron?
Satisfying ending. I mean, I think it would really be just sort of setting up the stakes for what's going to be the future of, I guess, just sort of the battles or whatever the status of the world is in general. I mean, I think that would be something that they would have to do, even if there isn't, all sort of peachy at the end or whatever. Just something that, we know that the future will continue on, like forever after or whatever. And then as far as relationships, I mean, I don't know. It depends on how much more they develop the relationships. I mean, yeah, there's something with Allura and Lance, and we could see a couple of things happen with some other characters as well. I don't know, maybe they'll do, like we said, maybe the final kiss or something like that, just to sort of set the stage for whatever could happen in the future. But I don't know. I think it really depends on what's the focus of the season, which for that part doesn't necessarily seem like it's relationships. But I don't know. I guess it depends on the battles and the stakes as well.
Yeah, and I suppose the final thing would be that like some shows end with like a time skip type thing. They kind of set up the ships, skip ahead, and like show children and stuff like that. I could potentially see them doing it with this show, just because, like, there was a point this season when Hunk, though they sort of went against it really being anything meaningful, talked about the idea of like, passing on the baton to the next generation, like as if like he's just going to hand over the yellow line to someone else. I'd almost be like okay if they went down the road of like, in an epilogue, just showed Voltron forming, and it's these other pilots, and it's like Lance and Allura's kid. Here's like this Galra kid who's like revealed to be like Keith and Oxia's or something like that, and then some other character that like something along those lines that like they have passed on Voltron. Voltron will continue to be the defender of the universe, but the paladins change and stuff like that. I could see them doing that as more of a kind of like generational thing that could set up something in the future, a separate plot if they want to continue in like books or comics or something like that. On the other side of things, they could go down the direction of like Voltron like properly being destroyed in the final battle, and like end the show with the idea that like Voltron defended the universe, but Voltron is gone. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on either of those ideas?
I mean, I don't know. The epilogue thing could work. I mean, I've seen it done before, but I don't know. It seems like the show, I don't know, regardless of which ending it goes with, I could see it just being a thing where even if Voltron is destroyed or whatever, I don't think the universe would ever be completely sort of saved. I think there'll always be sort of like a need for some sort of false, like maybe it won't be, the Voltron itself, the bot or whatever, but the coalition, the idea behind it will be something that sort of drives sort of peace in the universe. I could see something like that sort of happening, I guess.
Yeah, so I think that's most of what we wanted to talk about. As of now, we don't actually know when Season 8 is coming. it's still sort of unclear about if it was actually a thing that they said that like season 8 would also be coming this year or not. Because of how quick the show's been coming out, it does actually make sense. So I can see them announcing it at like showing off an episode, announcing it properly at New York Comic Con, and then it actually coming out like start of November or something like that. That makes sense to have like a final big panel to send off Voltron, and it seems like the perfect timing if production-wise they have it all done. But we haven't had a particularly long delay between seasons. Even back when we were doing 13 episode seasons, it feels like we're at the point where they're just kind of pushing out the last group of episodes. So while I think we're probably going to be waiting like a month or two from now, I don't think it'll be that much longer. Like I don't think we're waiting until like mid 2019 for the last season. But Greg, what are your thoughts about when we'll actually see season 8?
I mean, if they do anything during New York Comic Con, then I could see it coming pretty quickly. But I think if we don't hear anything by New York Comic Con, which is coming up pretty soon, just a couple months, then I don't know. I would expect like maybe early next year for some time.
Yeah. Either way, we're in Endgame. The way the creators are talking about the show, it feels like, you know, they've been kind of deep in kind of creating the end game already, so it doesn't feel like it's a long way away at the very least. So yeah, that's been our discussion on season 7. Overall, I thought it was a really good season, minus a couple of little points that kind of Voltron often tends to have, but the core of how I suppose emotional, intense and meaningful the Defense of Earth was well done throughout the season. They just perhaps took a little too long to actually get there. But Greg, your final thoughts on season 7?
Yeah, final thoughts. I think it was definitely a pretty good season. I think for the most part, most of the episodes worked for me. I mean, I definitely had, good bits of action. I had some development on characters that haven't had it as much. I think, they sort of, they pushed some characters forward, they pushed some characters back. So I think, in the grand scheme of things, I think it balances out, even if, in the specific sort of season, it might seem a bit sort of lopsided. But I think it's definitely, one of the better seasons overall for me.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that has been the Voltron Online Podcast for Season 7. The next podcast is going to be our review for Legend of Korra Turf Wars Part 3, which is out this upcoming Wednesday, and we'll get that podcast out as soon as we can. But yeah, that's been the podcast. It's been myself and Greg. Thanks for listening, and bye.
Bye-bye.